Hello, everyone. I'm joined today again with Peter Coffin to continue our book interview about GamerGate. How are you doing today, Peter?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Before we get back to the question list, last we were at the games journalism section, but before then, um, I want to ask you some questions about one, current events, two, some things that you're passionate about, and three, a little bit of your history. Okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So you actually were a game developer at one point, working on with Hipstairs.
Yeah, it was kind of it was just I wouldn't say I was a game developer. I would say I was trying. Oh, I'm getting I need to mute my video of the stream. um all right. So Hipstairs was this project that I was working on with another guy, and it never got done, which sucks because it was kind of cool. It was a the intent was to make a kind of funny game that was making fun of hipsters, because hipsters were a thing. I don't know if we even have hipsters anymore. Like everybody's kind of that now. We are all hipsters now, whether we like our VHS tapes or our old video games. I don't know. But it was a platformer. We were making it in Unity, and it was pretty rudimentary. It was kind of cool, I would say, but it wasn't like I wouldn't put it as I was a game developer because I think that's giving me a lot of credit.
This game though never came out.
No, we never finished it. We had like a prototype and like a very small level, and it. I wish we had stuck with it because it probably would have been cool. It probably would have taken longer because I think we were coming up with ideas a little, maybe a bit too fast. I don't know. It was kind of one of that. It was a learning experience in scale. The thing that I've learned, especially like that was about a decade ago. I think that was maybe 11, 12 years ago. I can't remember. Maybe around Gamergate. I feel like it was before Gamergate though, if I remember right. But the thing that I learned from that, and also ensuing things, is scale. I've learned about making sure that you keep restraints on what your projects are. That's the only way I've been able to finish books or documentaries or anything. Like I've really had to learn how to keep things a small scale, or at least not necessarily a small scale, but a controlled scale. You know.
I understand. This project has ballooned well beyond my original expectations and original plan.
I'll bet. Yes.
So just to
no, I,
confirm, go ahead.
no, I didn't have anything else to say too
So
important.
for Hipstairs, you didn't never raise any money for this, did you?
No, we were never at a point where we thought like it made sense to raise money for it. We were kind of just making it, and I don't even know if we had planned on making like a Kickstarter or anything for it. I think that our intent was to release it and try to make money off of it that way. I don't think we were going to crowdfund because I don't think it was. I mean, it was. If we had just stuck within our scope, I think that I think we would have been able to do that without funding it. It wasn't exactly a super complex game or anything.
All right. So before Gamergate, you also have there was an incident. You alluded to this a little bit in the first part of the interview. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Zia Zhu, she's a Singaporean influencer,
Yes,
wrote a blog post. She says that you insulted her about her
I
nose
did do
job.
that. Yes, that's for sure. And no, it wasn't about her nose job. It was about her marketing plastic surgery to kids. But whatever.
Well, do you have evidence that she did that?
I mean, look at her blog. Like her audience was mainly like 12-year-old kids, and like she was marketing herself as with her plastic surgery journey. I mean, it's marketing plastic surgery to kids.
I'll have to verify that for the book.
Yeah, I think. I mean, that's my perspective on it. It's I still stand by that, but I mean, you're welcome to make up your own mind on that.
And then in this blog post of hers where she criticizes you, she points out that Kimi Kobayashi, someone who you said at the time that you were
Mm-hmm.
dating and who you had a lot of social media interactions with, that
Mm-hmm.
this person was actually a fake account, that this
Yes.
was this was not a real person. Or well, it was a
Well,
real person running the account, I guess suppose. But she thinks it was
well,
you.
well, yeah. She thinks it was me, and it wasn't me, and it's unfortunately my word against hers. So it sucked a lot because on one end I was getting catfished. This was, I think, before the word catfish was super popular. Yeah, there was a documentary that came out, I think, in 2010, and there was a series on MTV that came out in the ensuing years that kind of popularized the word. But I I kind of had like a lot invested in that, like as you might expect, and it turned out not to be real. And it turned out the way that it was brought brought upon me, that it turned out to be real, was also uh, my life being destroyed in the public. It was a lot of fun.
So you have no well, you supposedly dated this Kim Kobayashi person for months.
Dated, I think, is, I mean, if you consider, you know, kind of having a long distance internet relationship dating, then yes.
But you never once at any point during this time period did live streams with her, video call, anything like this,
No,
phone
no, I
call
did
even.
not. I did audio calls. I never did video calls, and that was a something that I should have seen as a red flag at the time. But you live and you learn. Um, I did not do any video calls with this person. I did not do any content outside of just replying back and forth and making edgy jokes on Twitter with this person. Um, I don't know who
Well,
they
you did
are.
refer to yourselves as the power couple of Twitter.
Yes, it was clearly a joke, though. Like when you say that you're a power couple, it's not. At least I hope that you're not being serious.
And at
Um,
various points, this account did comment on your videos, telling someone to get a real girlfriend in one case. A little bit
yeah.
ironic.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I don't even remember that personally, but I do remember people. There were a lot of people who claimed that I said that I had actually physically been around this person, and I never claimed that.
So you also allegedly used other sock puppet accounts, according to Encyclopedia Dramatica, to
Very
ask
reliable
people
source of
ask.
information.
Well, they also source other things too. Um, they actually source Ethan Ralph, who I don't view as a reliable source necessarily, but
Yeah, I would
they
agree.
claim yes. They but according to Encyclopedia Dramatica and Ethan Ralph, that you use sock puppet accounts to ask people for money as well in a separate incident.
Uh, I never have done that. I don't know how. I don't know how you can prove I've never done that. I don't think that I can prove that I've never done that. But I've never been. The one time that I did a successful crowdfunding thing was when we crowdfunded for when I was married. We crowdfunded for my wife's jaw surgery, my ex-wife's jaw surgery. She had a serious issue with her jaw that caused ongoing pain, and we raised money for that. That's the only time I've ever, I would say, successfully raised large sums of money. I did have a Patreon for my content that did all right for a while, and it's kind of fallen off now. It makes $300 a month. It's not super good, but
Why would this
again, I've never. Go ahead. Sorry.
why would this account, this Kim Kobayashi account, this person that you say is a catfish, why would they have such an interest in building this fake relationship with you?
That's a good question. Um, Either they thought I was interesting or they thought I was an easy mark. One of the two, or maybe both. I really don't know.
Did they ever ask you for money or any sort of incentive like that?
No, never. No, I was never asked for money from that person, which was part of, I think, the rationale to keep talking to that person. There was never any ask for anything, so it was like, well, you're not trying to scam me, you know?
At various points, this account, this Kim Kobashi account, has made a lot of racist remarks about not racist, but like weird remarks about Asian people, and keep referring to
Yeah,
themselves as being an Asian, and they make a really big deal out of this.
yeah. And looking back, like I don't know if I probably don't believe that that was an Asian person. Like it's in the realm of speculation that I can't really. I have to imagine that their actual intent wasn't necessarily to, you know, represent Asians well. But like I have some Jewish background. I'm not actually Jewish. My family isn't even culturally Jewish, but if you go back, you can find Polish Jew in the blood pool, and I like making jokes about that. And this person acted the same way about Asian people, and I thought, oh, this is somebody who does the same thing I do, and that is kind of how that stuff happened. I think that there are appropriate ways to make jokes about like yourself or your identity or your background. I don't think that all of the ways that myself and that person were doing that were appropriate. And I definitely would do that a different way if I were in a relationship like that and making those types of jokes. But, there's a lot of people who they think that it was me making a bunch of Asian jokes, and therefore the contextual, assessment of those jokes is, I think, also very different. I do think it probably was a white person making those jokes. It was not me. It seems like the person was sort of, using it as a way to I make a lot of easy jokes, I guess. Like it's easy humor to do something that's like based on stereotypes and stuff like that. So I kind of think of it that way looking back, and also just, not really having the cultural and emotional intelligence of, time. Like I think I'm gonna turn 40 this year, and I think that, having done a lot of content and done a lot of humor and done a lot of more serious work, I've taken in a lot of, experience. Like when you're a small town idiot, and I am that, um, you you think that things are funny for a very specific reason. It's not necessarily like I think that people are bad or I think that this group is lesser. It's that stereotype equals funny. If I repeat stereotype in a way that I think sounds sarcastic or mean, that means I am somehow uh maybe even like somewhere between criticizing and just like doing a pastiche of something. I don't know. I nowadays
Well,
I look back on it and I say to myself, I have very different sensibilities now. I wouldn't do these types of things. I mean, it's not like I would never joke about being partially Jewish. I certainly would do that, but um, I would do it in a different way than I was then, for sure.
well, Peter, I'm a little bit skeptical here because you supposedly dated this person for months on the internet. You
Sure.
made a big deal out of this. You interacted publicly tons of times. You say that there
Mm-hmm.
were phone calls or video, or sorry, voice conversations at least. But
Yeah.
you have no, and this of course was a big story. Your reputation did take a hit for this. And at no point you say it's a he said she said, like you don't have anything that you could show. Like presumably there'd be months and months and months of DMs between you and this fake account, right?
It's 2024, man. I have none
But
of that.
this story broke over a decade ago. You could have provided that at the time, yes?
I probably could have, but I didn't. I mean, I also kind of looked at it as a kind of like an issue of principle as well. I don't know if I really like in my head it wasn't just like these people are coming after me for a thing. It's this is clearly like a perspective on a set of evidence that is being sold by people who have larger platforms than me, and I was pretty indignant about it. And I don't think that that was the right approach. But if I had any of that kind of stuff now, I would certainly
Well,
post it.
you have in the past confirmed DMs that were leaked, though. Why not do so in this case? The con leaks, you confirm those were real,
What
correct?
DMs? What do you have? Like, do you have any? I could.
The con leaks, right? The crash override network chat lock on Skype.
Yeah, but I don't. I don't understand how I could confirm leaks from this person.
Well, you could leak your own DMs from it, right? Presumably, and show that, hey, look, here's thousands of messages, or hundreds, or dozens, or whatever it is, between me and Kim Kobashi, or the person pretending to be this person,
From where?
from
That's
wherever
like
you
my.
communicated, right? Where did you communicate?
I don't have any of that. Like, I genuinely like it's.
Well, not now,
I
but contemporaneously, I mean.
Oh, sure. Then absolutely, I could have, and I should have. Um, the best I can say to you is, it was a very stupid way of going about it. I really handled that in a bad way. In every possible, like, if you look at how I interacted with people, I was constantly replying to people and trying to argue around it and deal with it, and it's just like it's not how people should act. Like, what I've learned is that an internet argument between me and one other person means absolutely nothing. I could convince that person, and that person will not, like, it doesn't matter, because that's one person. That's one person out there in the world, and I have to now do that millions of more times in order for it to actually matter, and that's not possible. So I think what that ended up being was just a lot of unhealthy bullshit. Sorry, pardon my French. Um, I don't know. I look back on that time as a very kind of almost addicted way of acting. I see that as being very, very, very online, and having like very rigid principles that I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Like, these people want me to apologize. I'm not even going to do that, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I felt like it was. I mean, the internet wasn't. It wasn't what it is today either. I didn't have the kind of experience with the internet that I do today. I didn't have, a decade of how people act when they don't believe you when you're saying something on the internet. I didn't have that experience. For the most part, my previous experience on the internet was just, you post stuff and people either think it's funny or don't like it. And from that point forward, my internet experience was very different. And again, I would kind of characterize it as unhealthy behavior. I don't look back on my actions during that time period fondly. I don't look back at them as intelligent or the right way to have gone about it. And if it happened now, I wouldn't have all of that experience then. But if I had the understanding that I have now, I would just leak everything. And I would also, beyond that, probably not fight with people about it, because all that does is create a constant expectation, not even just for other people, but for your own brain, to continually engage with something that is very stimulating, and it makes your brain constantly expect that. And I don't know if it gives you a dopamine hit. I hesitate to say that, because it did bring me to very low places. But it does do something with your, I think, incentive reward, those areas of your brain, because there is some kind of like a bit of a perverse reward in people arguing with you and you standing up for what you believe in, and even though it really doesn't matter and you aren't changing anybody's mind. In a lot of cases, you're making yourself look foolish. This is why I think, in a lot of ways, I was set up to kind of fail during the GamerGate era because I had been conditioned for a couple of years in that way. We talked about how I was actually introduced to GamerGate, the previous interview segment, and it was, if you recall, I talked about how somebody brought me that information, and I reacted in a way that sort of based my perception and my actions on the previous several years. And I think, personally, anyways, I think that I was very conditioned to end up on a side in a certain way because I had a very, very rigid sense of how I should handle this, what I should what's the right word? Not resist, but like push back. I'm not coming up with the right word, but I do think I was spending a very large amount of time kind of feeling a perverse validation over these fights, even if it wasn't necessarily good for me or making me feel good. There are people who get addicted to things, much worse things than internet drama, of course.
Well, before we jump into the GamerGate stuff, there's still a lot more questions I have. Some of them
Sure,
are
yeah,
related to this situation still. So, this person, this Kim Kobashi person that's fake, her pictures are actually of a real person, Lee Na
yeah,
Young, who is a Japanese celebrity.
sure,
I'm sorry, a South Korean celebrity. My mistake.
yeah. I don't.
But the
I'm not
person
actually.
pretending to be Kobashi claimed that they were Japanese, but it was actually
Yeah,
photos of a Korean person.
sure, yes.
Do you have anything you want to say to that person, or do you?
Well, I feel bad that that person was involved in any way. I never said anything to that person, nor have I been reached out to by that person.
I've
So
reached
I
out
don't
to her.
know. Oh,
She
did
did,
she say anything?
no, not yet, at least.
Well, I would be very interested in what she had to say. I would say that I regret that she had to be involved in something. She had absolutely no control over that. She had absolutely no input over it. That's generally not a good thing. I don't have a lot to say other than that. I do think that it's regrettable that a person who just had nothing to do with anything was dragged into it.
What sort of messages did you send to Jiju?
Oh, I don't know. I can't answer that.
All right. Okay.
I mean, that's not even something I think about. I just have no idea.
And you mentioned on her blog. I'm going through it a little bit. I've not read every blog post. She's a prolific blogger. What's the best evidence you have specifically on her blog that Jiju promoted children to get plastic surgery?
Well, again, it's marketing demographics. It's who's reading her blog and what she's pushing. It's lifestyle marketing. There's a lot of
So you think that
plastic surgery journey.
well, is that illegitimate for her to talk about her plastic surgery experience?
Oh no, I don't think that that's wrong. I think that you can talk about it, but I also think that there's a way to talk about it that's like not her being sponsored by plastic surgery companies and not her
Is she?
being. There were plenty of posts that were, yes.
Which ones?
Oh, I have no idea. I can't. We're talking about blog posts from 2010, I think.
Well, you knew
So
this was going to come up days in advance, though. I messaged you.
yeah, and if I'm completely honest, don't give a flying fuck about any of that shit.
Okay. All right. So you have strong views on the topic of plagiarism. I saw your video. You think it's mildly bad, but not a big deal, really.
I think in terms of plagiarism, I think that if we're going to pivot topics to that, like if we're going to say what's the right way to put this? I think that plagiarism is kind of interpersonally a jerk thing to do. I think that it's not cool to copy off of somebody else without like deferring to them and saying that. But from a systemic perspective, I do not think that it is a legitimate concern. And I think that the laws that people act like protect small artists actually don't. They protect large companies. And generally, when somebody who is small is stolen from by someone who is large, the large person will be able to persevere, as has been established with a lot of legal precedent. And I think that, when I reference somebody else's work, I always like to give it a nod. I always like to say, hey, I saw this here or I did that there. My book has 230 citations in it.
So
I think that it's a good thing to do to cite things, not just from a giving credit perspective, but also from a establishing actual reality. Like, hey, look, you can verify this claim by looking at this study, et cetera, that type of a thing. I think that those things are important. I just, from the perspective of like copyright law, I think that is generally, it's bad. It's rent seeking type behavior in a way that, in my opinion, creativity is all, it's taking in information, filtering it through your sensibilities, and repeating it, including your experiences and your unique perspective. Those things are built through taking in information. And all of that information, all the visuals, all of the events, all of that stuff happens externally. You internalize it, you filter it through your sensibilities, and you repeat. In my opinion, you edit it. Creativity is essentially editing. It's creative choices as to what to keep, how to
why
how
would
to
any
say
of this
something.
mean that plagiarism is okay, though?
What do you mean?
Well, is plagiarism okay in your view?
From a legal, all
Well,
right,
from a
from a,
moral perspective, or
from a
legally,
moral
well,
perspective, I don't
morally,
care at
yes.
all. I don't
So
care
you
at
don't think
all. Like, morally, who cares?
if you're stealing other people's content, and not giving them credit for it, and then you're passing it off as your own content, that's wrong, correct? In my view, it is.
I think it's not.
So it's wrong on a couple levels, right? One, because you're taking someone else's stuff and you're passing it off as yours, which is not true. So you're
Hmm.
defrauding the other person's work essentially, or you're
No, you're
taking it
not.
for you're taking it for your own
I
benefit.
mean, you're doing that every time you say anything. Like, you are taking something that you saw somewhere else and you are repeating it.
Well, if I'm quoting someone, I usually provide the source of the quote, right?
Yeah. So, how do you cite the sky's blue? How do you cite the road is concrete? How do you cite those
Well,
things?
those aren't things you
Like,
necessarily have to cite, right? Those would not be claims you have to cite. But if I'm like taking someone's book and I'm taking large sections of it and I'm publishing those unrecited, or even small sections of it and taking those and passing it off as my work, it's also misleading the audience too, because they believe that you have this level of expertise and knowledge that you don't.
I disagree. I think that people can pretty easily check to see if somebody else has said something. It's called Google.
Well, I
Like,
mean,
we
obviously
don't.
not, right? We just saw that video where many people have been getting away with this for years. Internet Historian, for instance, various others, Illuminati, they've been stealing other people's content for years, and no one noticed until recently.
That's absolute bullshit, though, because their content is not. It's not the same thing. It doesn't matter if you recite something that somebody else said. If you put it in when you put something in a context, when you put it with a visual, when you say something, you're saying it differently. There are sensibilities that are exerted on those things, whether they even realize it or not. Again, I will say creativity is editing. It is choosing what to keep and what not to keep. That is what creativity is. Now, if you want to talk about is it a jerk thing to do or is it not a jerk thing to do? I think it's a jerk thing to do. I think that it's good to like it's nice to credit people. But like, is it defrauding? Absolutely not.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
We live in
It
a
doesn't
world where
matter.
your reputation is increasingly what matters. If you're passing other
Then,
people's work off as your own, then yes, yeah, you are defrauding the public.
well, shouldn't the public be able to do any work whatsoever checking that if they really care?
Well, I would these same excuses that we criticize games journalists all the time, right? Well, the games journalists. Well, look, shouldn't the public just know that like Nathan Grayson and this person are friends? And
Oh, that's different. That's
is it?
not something that you can Google. You can't just simply Google people's
I mean, actually,
relationships.
you can, right? Because like as it turns out, a lot of this stuff was public information at the time.
Yeah, but I would say that that's a very small amount of the information that makes up a person's life. Like if you say we need to look into this person's connections, usually that's not a simple Google search. It is a simple Google search to check if somebody else has said something.
No, especially when they go to great lengths to try and hide it, like some of these people have.
Internet historian did not go to great lengths to hide it.
I think he did,
I think that's
from
dumb.
what I've
That's
seen, at least. All right, so
I've watched the H bomb plagiarism video. I've seen the whole thing. Like it's very silly. And you
well, he
know,
takes
the other
he
thing
changes a couple words here and there to try and make it look like it's not his. So if you just put the quote in Google, you're not going to find it because he changed certain elements of the word. He changed the words,
oh
but more or
no,
less.
whatever will never would have heard of do.
What about plagiarism in academia? That's a recent scandal recently, a recent
I mean,
conversation.
again, I just don't care. I think all of that stuff is dumb. Like I don't believe in copyright law. I don't believe in intellectual property.
But you don't think it's a problem if scientists are passing off other people's work and pretending to be theirs so that they can pretend that they're experts and fluff up their
Again,
resume?
when you're talking about academics, like you're talking about an entire sector of people who are capable of checking work better than anyone else is.
I mean, I'm not sure if that's necessarily true because some of these people have gotten away with it for years as well.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Well,
I'm fine with that.
you say that you want to
Who
talk
does it?
about
Like, let's talk about society. How does that mess up society? On a scale, how does a few bad actors in certain areas actually affect society? It really doesn't.
well, it does because they're defrauding the public, right? You have scientists, for
They're
instance,
not
or
defrauding. Like, if they're saying something that's false, they're defrauding the public. I don't
well, they're
really
saying
care who
they
said
are right. They're
something.
saying I did these papers and I didn't do them, and they're lying to the public.
Again, it's very
I
easy to
did the
check.
research on this historical phenomena.
I've done tons of research that
That's
other
what they're
people
saying,
have
right?
used without crediting me. And you know what? I just don't care.
Okay. You say you want to talk about systemic issues when it comes to plagiarism. What do you mean?
It's incentives and rewards. The problem is all incentives and rewards. We are not paying people for labor, we are paying them for property, and we're paying them for the winning property rather than paying them for the work that is put in. People say, you're defrauding these people, you're taking this stuff. Like, no, you can't take labor from someone. That's impossible. You can compensate people on a basis different than labor, but you can't just steal somebody's labor. If we paid people based on the work, the incentive would be to research. The incentive would not be to churn out as much shit as you possibly can. That's, in my opinion, the problem. We have set up a system, and I don't have a simple solution for you. So if if you're going to ask me that, I really don't have a solution for you. But my critique is that we are rewarding based on property, particularly the winning property, and we are not rewarding based on labor.
Some YouTubers have made videos criticizing your opinion. One of them was Actual Jake. Another one was a smaller creator. I should probably give them a shout out. Give me 2 seconds. I don't remember their name.
Both embarrassing videos. I know several people who have made videos, and they're all embarrassing because they don't even bother engaging with the arguments I put in my videos.
The Epheromometer. It looks like there's a few others who might have critiqued it as well. So, matriarch type. I've not seen all of these, but in Actual Jake's video, he says we can do both, fix the system, and also hold people to ethical standards.
I think that's just the wrong view. I think when you're talking about interpersonal situations, ethical standards and morals, they apply. But I think we're not talking about that when we're talking about plagiarism as a writ large issue in an 18 million view video.
Why can't we both reform the system to make it easier for smaller people who've been victimized by plagiarism to make claims, and also at the same time hold people to account if they do engage in plagiarism. What?
Because the people who are engaging in plagiarism are the small people. The big people
Internet
aren't
historians
like
not small. The, the
that's
the
not a bit.
president of the university who was engaged in plagiarism of that one university, I can't remember the name now. They weren't a small person.
Are they in control of the media narrative? Are they in
Well, they're the
control of
president of a university. I'd say that that's a pretty prestigious role in the world and influential role in society. Yeah.
Well, I think that there are other reasons why that person was a problem there. Um, I think that there are other reasons that that's a problem than they use other people's work without proper citation.
Peter, have you ever used anyone's work without citation?
I try probably. Like, I'll just go ahead and
Deliberately,
say
on
that.
purpose.
Never on purpose. Not once on purpose.
Okay.
I would never do that. See, the thing is, from an individual perspective, I'm not going to do that. Like, when somebody does something, I always like to point at them and say, look, this person does it. From my personal individual point of view, like, you will probably think that it sounds very different from what I'm saying here, because I don't like the idea of saying, like, that person didn't do, or that person, sorry, let me start that sentence over. I don't like the idea of not pointing at a person who did something cool and saying, look at the cool thing this person did. This person's good at the thing they do. I like that. That's something that I think is good. But I don't think that that's a good basis for how we're incentivizing and rewarding the creation of knowledge, content, and art.
Some people have speculated, including people in the comments section of my videos, that you might have changed your mind on GamerGate because either one, you saw an opportunity to grift, or two, you you um, you saw that the one side was winning and one side was losing, and you wanted to be on the winning team.
Oh,
What do you think
I
of
don't think
this?
I don't think that GamerGate is an issue that you can grift on. For one, I think that is like, there are 7 people watching this stream right now. You are making this book as what I would consider probably a labor of love and a dedication to truth and perspective. I don't think that that's even a kind of a valid accusation. I think that people who are doing this type of content right now, who are taking it seriously at least, and I do include you in that bucket of people, because you are taking, out of everybody who I've seen, you have easily done the most extensive content on this that I have seen to this point. But as far as which side is good, which side is bad, again, I would say that you would probably get me. I don't really like the sides thing, and this is why I don't think that it's really possible to put me into that bucket, so to speak, because my critique is always, or it over the years has developed into, this has been set up as team sports, and Gamergate is a very good example of things that were set up in team sports, and I am more against that setup than I am against any one side of that situation. It's that setup, the idea that this side, their key things are X, Y, and Z. This side are A, B, and C. A, B, and C is right. X, Y, and Z is wrong. And there is no compromise between those. It's a competition. It's an argument. It goes on. That is more my problem with Gamergate, because if you are attempting to take an empathetic standpoint, it's very easy to see where both sides are coming from. There are a lot of people on the anti-Gamergate side that were like myself, that got in more or less because it was being represented as an issue about internet harassment, and I had experienced a lot of that. There are also a lot of, I think, legitimate concerns about, like, cultural critique and things like that. I don't know that their responses to those concerns would be real. I do think that there is, it's worth talking about, like, sexualizing content and things like that. I don't think that it's worth censoring it. I don't think that it's worth. I think it's worth talking about it from a perspective of, what is the value? Is there a value? Is it just, like discussing it more neutrally, I would say. But I think that there's value in talking about it, and I think that there's a real concern. And when you don't address the concern and you don't have the conversation, all you have is people kind of existing in a an uninformed bubble, I guess. But from that side, I can see things that people legitimately cared about that one might think that one could address through Gamergate. And on the other side, the reason why I have gotten to where I am on it is because the Gamergate side, I see a lot more reflection over what my concerns are as, a Marxist, a person who sees corporate control of everything as not a necessary part of human life. And I see that more in the rearview mirror when I look at Gamergate from the Gamergate side. I see more of that there than I ever saw at the time. Like, at the time, that was represented as kind of the excuse. And the problem was these various individuals. I would say that framing, I talked about this last time, that framing harmed people's view of who the bad guy was. Because again, I talked about how if Kotaku had been the main target rather than specific individuals, maybe more precedent could be established, maybe more protocol could be established that prevents the types of things that the individuals allegedly did during that time. Like, there's plenty of evidence that there was corruption and wrongdoing done by those journalists. To what extent, I would say that there is room for discussion on that, but I would also say that there's plenty of evidence. And if the target had been Kotaku, like, why are you letting this happen, as opposed to these people are bad, the result would be at least, I don't know if the result would be different, because I don't know if they would actually be able to change an outlet like Kotaku, which is, to be frank, kind of a dishonest outlet. But at least you would be targeting the right thing, and maybe you could leverage enough pressure to move things in a different direction. But long story short, when I look at the concerns of both sides from an empathetic perspective, from a, what do these people really truly care about perspective, I see a lot more of the anti-corporate, anti-institution sentiment on the Gamergate side than I do on the anti-Gamergate side. I don't think the cultural criticism and concerns are fake, but I do see how that very quickly leads people into useless political concern. Whereas I see, although I do think that Gamergate's focus was kind of directed in ways that it shouldn't have, I see the seeds of what is, I think, perhaps more productive concerns there. I will probably never be what someone would call pro Gamergate, and I certainly will not in the future be anything that anyone would call anti Gamergate. But I think that it's hard to say that I quote unquote switch sides in order to be on the right side, because I have a critique for both sides, and I do have empathy for both sides. I see what people wanted, and I see how things went. And I think that on either side, what people wanted and how it went is not how it played out. And that's kind of how I try to look back on it. Like, what is to be learned from either side here? And from my perspective, a lot of what I've come to is caring a lot more about what people really, like, if you drilled them down on it, if you were like, what really matters about this issue to you? I feel like it's much closer to what as a Marxist, I would be concerned about, which is corruption, which is power, which is those types of things. Whereas I don't think there was really a lot of. I think that on the other side, there is a lot of deference to power, and I think there's a lot of looking past corruption. So I do think from that perspective, like that's why at least reevaluating GamerGate has an appeal for me. I don't know if it's again, I don't think I would ever call myself pro GamerGate. I don't think I would call myself. I don't like separating myself. I don't like just blatantly. And GamerGate is part of why I don't like it. My experience with GamerGate is part of why I don't like picking a team and being with it, because a lot of, you said the Crash Override chats were leaked. You can tell a lot of it is, the people who actually were in control sort of directing people's attention to, look at how bad this is.
We're going to get to that in the harassment section. But
you know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like,
they were
if you actually
in
read
actual
those
harassment, despite being an ostensible anti-harassment organization.
Yes.
But I'm going to ask you
and
more
it's
about
also
that when
like,
we get to that section.
Look how bad this is. Look at this thing. Give your attention there. You know what I mean?
All right, so we have some other more recent events to cover. One of them is a little bit of a drama event, but Destiny, who everybody knows, he recently got into a little bit of a spat with Ludwig, who is a Super Smash Brothers player and a streamer as well. So it's a whole developing story. Basically, they have a really long history with each other. Ludwig has made a lot of pot shots at Destiny over the years. Like he implied that he was ugly and stuff like this. Like not critiques of like his opinions or like saying he got something wrong, but just like cheap shots, Recently, Destiny, in response to one of these critiques, decided to tweet out a picture of Ludwig's girlfriend, who is a public figure, also a streamer, QT Cinderella. He tweeted out a picture of her crying.
Right.
And some people said that Destiny went too far. What do you think of all this situation?
What is the nature of the picture of her crying? Is it like...
It's just her crying on live stream. That's basically it. As far as I can tell.
I do not understand how that is. And I am not like...
Well, because she's not... QT Cinderella is her own person, right? So she does her own... She like dragging her into this when she just because she's dating Ludwig. People say that that's not quite fair to her.
Yeah, I'll say like maybe that's not fair to her, but also when you are with somebody and you are in the public sphere, there is some grouping, and I think that that's also something that you have to think about when you're in relationships that are public. And I have been in more than one public relationship with actual real people, thankfully. But sorry, I don't mean to crack myself up, but sometimes I'm an idiot too. But those people exist as part of it. There's a relationship, a connection. And I do think that there is a line where it's not okay to involve another, a person who you have a public relationship with. I think that if you really start getting into low blows, but I don't understand how a screenshot from a stream is that. I feel like that's a thing that person put out into the world,
Okay. Now, there's also the story. There's more elements. There's some new stuff that dropped today, I believe, but I haven't seen that yet. But Ludwig also made up a story. It seems so. Ludwig said that Destiny was at a party with him, and that Ludwig offered Destiny cheese balls, and that Destiny refused his generous offer of snacks at the party. But strangely, someone dug up an old video from this party, and it looks like Ludwig misrepresented events because Destiny throws the cheese ball and he catches it in his mouth, kind of like a party gag.
So he clearly has the cheese balls. He's accepted the cheese balls. Wow, that is... I'm sorry, I got to take a second on that. That's a pretty odd story to make up and tell to the public. What is the significance of the cheese ball?
I don't know, other than I guess to make him look like he's kind of an antisocial person, which like I don't, even if he is, which he probably, I mean, Destiny, I know Destiny's like a very social person, right? He's not in his own way.
I've been around Destiny before. He does not like me, and he even talked to me when I was around him, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
He dislikes me actually pretty significantly, but he would still talk to me. So I don't. It's I don't know. I'm not a Destiny defender or anything. I will absolutely defend him if he's doing something that I think is fine. But this is just sounding like a weird like the
Well,
cheese
it
balls.
looks like the real motive that Ludwig has. And again, I can't speak to Ludwig. I sent him and Destiny both emails, Jiju as well, to try and get their perspectives on the story.
Sure,
Neither Ludwig nor Destiny have replied to the email. So,
right. Well, I don't
but
know. It just this comes off to me as like really like odd interpersonal bickering because I don't I can't I'm sorry the cheese balls thing has thrown me for a loop.
well, it's a
Again,
weird thing to seemingly lie about.
yeah, it's a
The
like
only
I'm
defense I can think of for Ludwig is like if there were various points at the party where he offered them at various points, and maybe at one point Destiny
sure.
said no, and then later on someone
Yeah,
else
but
had the cheese balls and they were like, "Hey Destiny, do you want these?" And he's like, "You know what? Fuck it, I'll have one." Like that's the only defense I could think of for Ludwig, but I think he just basically lied about it, probably.
yeah, but that brings us into a territory where we're litigating like whether or not somebody accepted cheese balls.
Well, it seems
It's
like the
such a
real reason is because Ludwig is a fan of Hassan, and he even says, Ludwig
sure.
said publicly
Oh,
that he thinks
okay.
that he said that he used to think that everyone who disliked Hassan was a Destiny fan, which is like a really weird comment to make, given that Hassan's like a
Mm-hmm.
major public figure with controversial opinions. Um,
Well,
but
I don't like Hassan,
I don't like Hassan. I am a Destiny fan though, I
and
guess.
I'm not a Destiny fan. Again, I am kind of a I am like whenever I've interacted with him, it's always been in conflict. But at the same time, like I am also very willing to defend when he says something that I think is either not a problem and people are making it into a problem, or something that I think that he says it's intelligent. Like the documentary I'm currently working on is about the left-right dichotomy on things, and I'm actually using his appearance on the Jordan Peterson podcast for a lot of he's very close to making the point that I am trying to make in that area of the documentary, and I give him props for it, honestly.
So
So
I just want to
so
say,
I would say that me disliking Hassan I don't think stems from any opinion on Destiny, though. Like Hassan is his own animal, and he's he sucks. I would say that like
he hates
I think
Gamergate, by the way. He doesn't know anything about Gamergate. He's done
he
zero
doesn't know
research on the
anything
topic,
about
but he
anything.
that's probably true. Or I don't want to say like maybe like he's like maybe streaming he knows a lot about, right? But
Yes, no, I would give you that. Yes,
but yeah, he actually talks about Gamergate on his show all the time, and he's like, but he only uses it as an insult. He's like, those fucking Gamergate
well,
misogynists, rah! And he like loses
exactly.
his mind, but he never like
Well,
does a deep dive into it or anything.
that's the team sports speaking. That's like team sports to the nth removed power. I don't know how to put it, but it's generations of this team is good, this team is bad, and now there's no concrete reasons that this generation of people who are taking those two sides are even talking about, like you said. And this is exactly the problem I was talking about, because Hassan's way of addressing Gamergate, I'm not necessarily completely familiar with, but the way you're describing it to me sounds exactly like the thing that I was complaining about when I was talking about team sports. It's
Well,
a
it's a virtue
reduction.
signal. It's basically right.
Yes,
So in his head, the
absolutely.
only thing he knows is Gamergate equal bad, and so therefore it's fair game to lie, I guess, and just make
It's
stuff
it's
up.
it's yeah, it is, as opposed to being a word with a definition that means something and has specific implications. It is just an insult. It is just a bad thing. And that to
Well,
me,
go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead.
Well, is
No, you
that
go
what
ahead.
is happening with Ludwig? Basically, that Destiny he perceives at least that Destiny is sort of the bad guy, and so in order to be in Hassan's good graces, he feels like he has to basically throw him under the bus a little bit with the cheese ball story and all this stuff.
To me, I will say that it does sound like it's very possible because in a like a normal situation, in any situation where you are observing normal social dynamics, this cheeseball thing would not even be something you talk about. At least that's my perception of it. Um, I mean, granted, I certainly don't have all the information, but I can't imagine doing like a deep dive for information on a cheese ball incident, whether or not somebody accepted cheese balls from another person.
Well, we talked
Like
about.
it,
Sorry.
no, it's fine.
We talked about plagiarism earlier. I just want to say that some of the research I did for this came from Suspicious Bid 9583 on Reddit, and then
Right,
also I saw some of Food Shop's coverage of the situation too.
sure. And see, I'm having I feel like I'm connecting the absurdity of the cheese balls conversation with what you've said about how it relates here, because again, that sounds like something that under no normal circumstance would be a legitimate criticism. And so again, whether it's Hassan versus Destiny, or he's literally trying to get in with the good graces of Hassan, it sounds like attempting to make ammunition out of something that you perceive as usable, as opposed to having a legitimate grievance.
Well, Ludwig did publicly respond. He says that because after people found out that he misrepresented the cheeseball story, after that he said, "Well, it doesn't really hurt his reputation that much," or something along those lines. I believe he said publicly was his
Yeah,
defense.
I mean, you know, I don't think like it definitely doesn't make me think less of Destiny. I'll say that. Like, no, it doesn't hurt. If anything, it hurts Ludwig's reputation because it's such a dumb thing to care about.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about you and Destiny a little bit since you two have a history.
Hmm.
So you made a video of you in a hoodie. I couldn't find this online, but I found references to it where you pretended to be Destiny as a parody. You were parodying Destiny, right?
Yeah, I was parodying Destiny. I was using. There was a video I made about democracy because Destiny had actually talked about democracy not necessarily being a good thing, and I felt like that aligned him with actually a fairly large range of different viewpoints that all kind of trend against democracy. And some of those are like Ben Shapiro, and some of those are, I don't remember other
Well,
ones.
I think Destiny
But
does obviously believe in liberal democracy.
I think so, yes. I agree. I think that he was kind of maybe on a bit of an arc. I don't know if it was
I don't know
a
the
thing that,
context, so I can't say. He felt like you were
yeah,
misrepresenting him a little bit, though, so he thought that you were basically
he
smearing
thought that
his
I was
reputation.
only, well, see, that's the part of the reason why I don't have that video still up is because the character that I did in that video, it was a documentary, and I usually play a character in a documentary, was not intended to just be him. It was intended to be an amalgamation of several different people, him being one of them, Ben Shapiro being another one of them, and again, a couple of other people I don't exactly remember at this moment. But a lot of people took it as just about Destiny, and that to me kind of represents a failure in the idea itself because it's not being taken in the way that it's intended to be. And like a lot of that video is that, like, whether I'm necessarily delivering information specific to Destiny, I am doing that character in a lot of that video. And a lot of people, whether because they were aware of my conflict with him or not, were taking it that way. And I didn't really like that. So I privated it. And I've since readdressed the topic. And also, you know, I made one, I have my documentary series. It's called Very Important Documentaries. I did it for years on my main channel. And I've taken most of those down because I think that they're either not extensive enough and don't make the point well enough, or problems like that where some kind of aesthetic choice that I made undermined the point that I was making.
Was he one of the inspirations for that character you created?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But the problem is that he wasn't the only one and
Who
people were
else?
taking it as though he was the only one. Like I said, Ben Shapiro and a couple of other people that I don't currently remember.
So,
Um,
do you feel like you owe him an apology?
no, I don't. I don't think that I do. I don't think that it really damaged his reputation in any way. Again, again, I don't know that this cheeseballs thing again really necessitates an apology either. I don't think I really harmed him in any way. I think I annoyed him. And, I don't really. He's done things that annoy me, and he doesn't owe me an apology. I think that
Well, he did cover the Shizhu story.
that's fine. I mean, that's
Well,
perfectly
I don't think
okay.
he owes you an apology for that. To be clear.
Yeah, and I don't either. It's of note, and I think that it's fine when people cover it. It's not really an issue. I think that there's stuff again, like I said, there's stuff that Destiny does that annoys me that I don't think he owes me an apology for because like if it's of note, it's certainly fine to talk about.
Peter,
In this case, go ahead.
no. In this case,
Well, in this case, I would say like to me, it was a joke that didn't do what I wanted the joke to do, which was amalgamate, a kind of character that was an impression of several people. And what I learned from that is don't do that. Don't attempt to amalgamate several people because whatever comes out most prominently will be the thing that people think it is, and it will just be that in other people's minds. So the reason I brought up my old documentaries versus my new ones is I've changed my approach. All of my new ones, I don't do any specifics with the characters. I do very generalized characters, like somebody in a toga or somebody in somebody like dressed as somebody who might remind you a little bit of the Unabomber or I'm failing to remember what or like the Mad Bomber archetype, that type of thing. Archetypes is the word I'm searching for. I've much more trended towards archetypes, and that was what I learned from that specific thing. You like just impersonating, even if it's several people. If there's one person who it ends up resembling more, that will be the person that people think you're impersonating.
so Peter, you identify as a Marxist-Leninist. Why do you care about other people supposedly mocking democracy?
Because democracy, well, that's a very complex question. Um, I'll try my best to simplify what I think.
Well, we're gonna get to
I
your
think
full
that
political views later on, but I
sure.
don't typically associate Marxist-Leninism with democracy.
Well, see, that's the interesting thing is Marxism-Leninism isn't actually anti-democracy at
Well,
all. It
Marxist-Leninism
is,
was coined by Stalin, was it not, as a specific form of Marxism?
yes. I mean, the word Marxism-Leninism was, but really what I'm talking about is Lenin's work, more or less. It's incorporating Lenin's work to Marx's work,
Why not?
which,
So why use the Marxist-Leninist phrase, which has only been used by dictatorships and by
because
Stalin
it's,
himself? Oh, I'm
well, it's
sorry, I
definition.
jumped ahead. We weren't supposed to get to there yet. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's definitionally accurate, though. Like, am I just supposed to call myself? What am I supposed to like? I think that Lenin is correct, and I think that Marx is correct. I think that
Do you think that
like,
Lenin
and I
was a
don't, I
Democrat?
don't think Stalin was like entirely wrong. I think that he did a lot of wrong things, but I don't think that like. I also think that to take what the Soviet Union was as what I believe is also incorrect. I think a lot of the problem of the Soviet Union was developing a lot of prescriptions ahead of time and attempting to go to it rather than resolving contradictions as they come, which is actually the core of Marxism.
Well, we can explore communism a little bit here, but I do want to get back to the Destiny stuff and then the Alt 4 conferences of development. But
Sure.
all right. So, do you think Lenin was a Democrat?
Well, I think that's again a complex question. I think Lenin believed
Is it?
in proletarian democracy as opposed to bourgeois democracy. Now, the problem is that what you believe in isn't necessarily what happens. And I think that I think that going through the history of the Soviet Union, there's a lot of things that were done wrong. It's just like going through the history of China. Like the Cultural Revolution sucked. It was stupid. And in more recent years, they have reevaluated that. And the current, sorry, my daughter is. What's up? Here, hold on just a moment. I need to go resolve something.
Okay. Hey, chat. Maybe I shouldn't say anything because.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, that's fast. Okay.
Yeah, I just had to go tell one of my kids to stop acting
Well,
a
let's
certain
talk
way.
about what Lenin did, right? I mean, Lenin did coup the democratically elected government of Russia. The socially democratic government.
That is a drastic simplification, I think, of it.
Well, I mean,
And I
that is what
don't.
happened, though, right? Essentially.
Well, I mean, let's say January 6th actually upended the White House and actually took power. That would technically be coupping the democratically elected government, but a lot of people would view that as an improvement, and
Those people
even
would
that.
be wrong. Those people
Well,
would be anti-democratic.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I would.
I don't. I don't think that a coup is automatically anti-democratic. I do think that
If
it's
you're
not
couping a
necessarily.
democratic government, it is.
I disagree because I think that democracy, as stated, is not necessarily something that is executed on properly, like ever. It's like when people say that's not real communism or that's not real capitalism. You could also say that's not real democracy. With almost any democracy that has reached a, mass scale, for the most part, the ideas are not executed on in the way that they're laid out. Now
So
that
do you think that coups against the United States of America would be legitimate in your view?
that really again, that's I don't think automatically so. No. I think
Oh, no. Do you think that with our current system of government as it exists right now in the year 2024, that a coup would be
could
justified
be.
if they?
It could be justified. I'm not saying it would be justified.
What do you think of the
It,
Kronstadt rebellion?
I am unaware of it.
Okay, I only know a little bit. I don't know enough to really dive into deep.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
wouldn't be able to discuss it at length in a way that I think would be helpful to our conversation.
What was Stalin right about?
Stalin was right when he said, here, there's a quote that I can give you. I won't find it, actually. He actually talked about how liberal democratic values, if executed on correctly, would be good. He said that specifically. In fact, before Khrushchev took over, another leader said that as well, if I remember. They might have been quoting Stalin, but part of the reason why the USSR existed in the way that it was that it was essentially a siege communism. It was them versus the world, and I think that's first off, I don't subscribe to the idea of saying that's not real communism. I think that argument is silly, just like the that's not real capitalism, that's corporatism argument. I don't agree with that. They're all attempts at various different things, and failures and successes are both valid on either side. I'm not somebody who thinks capitalism is evil, for instance. I think that capitalism represents a marked progression from feudalism, and I think that markets have been shown to vastly improve technology over very short periods of time. China also proved that by taking them on, and although their markets are definitely a lot more controlled, they did use markets to expand their technological capabilities very quickly. They expanded a lot of infrastructure very quickly, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not one of these people who is going to tell you like capitalism is evil. I don't care about that. That's not my concern. My concern is that history is essentially the struggle of one class versus another. The struggle that gave us capitalism was the struggle of the bourgeoisie versus the aristocracy slash monarchy slash whatever you want to call it.
So Stalin,
And
why do you care about this quote from Stalin that you think is something he's right about supposedly democracy being okay in some circumstances?
not
When
in
he,
some circumstances.
what was his, what do you think he's right about specifically?
Well, that like the ultimate goal is not siege communism. It's not communism where we have to lock down everything. That's not the goal.
Well, I
There-
mean,
there-
you're talking about a man who purged his political opponents, who invaded Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, who worked with Hitler to invade Poland and wanted to join
that's
the Axis powers, right? So why?
nah. I
And he
don't.
also planned his own. Didn't he plan his own little anti-Semitic purge too, right before he
No, he
died? But it
didn't.
didn't happen. The doctor's plot.
Nah, he didn't. That's bullshit.
So why do we care about what he has to say about democracy?
Well, see, here's the thing. You seem to care about it a lot more than I do. I
Well, he
don't
said he
really
was
care a
right
lot
about it. It's
about
the
it.
one thing he thinks he's right about, right? Or well, one of the things at least he thinks he's right
Not the
about.
one thing. But I think that he's right about democracy. That if executed on, would be good. I think that that's true. Do you disagree with that?
No, I'm sure if Hitler said the same thing, I wouldn't disagree with him on that specific claim either.
Well,
Let's
that's
look at
kind
his
of the
actions,
point I'm
though.
making here. Well, again, like any actions, you can if you actually have if you drill down things, like as I said, I think that the successes of communism should be noted, and I think that the failures include a lot of deaths. That's 100% true. I agree with that, and I think uh, when you're talking about these issues, also it should be noted that capitalism has caused a lot of deaths. The history of human development is not a clean one; it's messy, and it's just how
But
things are.
I'm not praising a capitalist dictator.
Nor am I.
Well, you are praising Lenin, right?
Lenin was not a dictator.
Okay. So, um, is it useful for Destiny to get involved in these debates? These Twitter spats with like Ludwig and tweet out the picture of the of Cutie Cinderella and stuff like that because he's already a huge famous person at this point. Destiny is.
Yeah,
He's got
no,
a huge
I
public profile. Is trolling on Twitter and like it was in response to Ludwig trolling him. To be fair,
sure.
but
Yeah.
is that something useful to do at this point when you're already as big as he is?
Well, I don't know. It depends on what he considers useful. From my perspective, it's maybe not super useful, but I also, it's not the basis I would critique Destiny on. I think that you're allowed to do, like, if you feel like something's bothering you, you shouldn't be stopped from, responding to it. I don't think that it's useful in the progression of his agenda or ideas. But I may also be wrong about that. Like he certainly has done a much better job getting attention and getting out there than I have. So maybe it's part of that. I in all honesty, like it's something that I feel judging him on too harshly. I don't really think I would believe in that. Would I call it useful based on my own experience? Probably not. But I also, in a lot of ways, probably understand why he would be. So I'm pretty neutral on that, honestly.
Okay. And I don't really care either.
Sure.
If you're gonna be attacked by somebody on Twitter, responding with your own little meme and mocking them, I think that that's probably fine. I don't care.
I completely agree. I
Now,
think that it's
is it
something.
now if does that make it less likely for you to get into the big rooms though? The Jordan Peterson debate, the Ben Shapiro debate, are they going to look at that and be like, "Oh, well he was really mean to Ludwig and this woman, it's bad PR for me." Are they going to think that, or a politician who might want to go on his show? I don't know. But also,
It's possible.
I think that those politicians though should grow a fucking spine and just
That would
do
be
it
my
anyway. That
response
would be
as
the
well. Like
better
that's why
outcome.
that's what I was going to get at. I said it's
Yeah.
possible, but also if a politician can't handle a guy posting a meme because somebody's accusing him of refusing cheese balls, that politician's kind of a spineless weasel.
So, Destiny's obviously been doing a lot of stuff lately. The Anything Else podcast, Bridges. You have any thoughts on those? And then he's also talking about making his own media company as well. He says that he wants to make a media company where he can be proud of the stories that they run, and
Mm.
he'll know that he'll hire people that he trusts who he thinks will present both sides of a perspective. Um,
Well,
what do you think of this and his recent activity with the Bridges and anything else?
I'm not really familiar with the Bridges stuff, but I am. I think that it's commendable that he would want to create a media outlet that would show both sides of things more, like a more objective media outlet. I don't know if I believe that that will be the result, but I would like it to be. And if he manages to pull it off, if he manages to get in people who are, because it's not just about him. It's not just about him and his opinions and what he sets out to do. It's about who ends up in it,
Yes, correct.
what ends up being profitable, what ends up like if that's the ultimate goal, and for, like it really depends on a lot of factors. Um, I would like that to succeed personally if it were to actually be able to execute on that mission. I would support that, even though, again, I am often in with conflict with Destiny. If more objective news could be put out there on a large scale in which people would actually see it, that can only be a good thing, in my opinion.
I agree. Now, who do you think he should hire? I mean, other than me, of course.
I don't know. I would say that your thoroughness would certainly be a good fit for something
Well, I'm
like
trying
that.
to get in touch with him actually because I'm hoping he can talk with me about my book project.
Yeah.
So I have
I
an
mean,
insert. So it's
again,
part of the reason I'm covering this story with the Ludwig stuff. Actually, I have an incentive there.
right. Sure, but like it's also understandable. I don't know really who to hire. I'm not really well connected in terms of like actual journalists and that stuff. That would have to be something that you'd have to spend a lot of time on too. Like
Yeah, you would.
I would hope that a lot of rigor would be put into who he hires if he's able to execute on that.
There are some really good journalists out there, like Lily
Sure.
Walsh, but she's running her own thing right now. She runs. She just made her own company actually.
Uh-huh.
Uh, sorry, 2 seconds. Trusting News. She runs Trusting
Mm.
News.
Well,
And then Koretsky's really good too.
I
Michael
am
Koretsky.
unfamiliar with those.
He's
I
the
am
one who ran
unfamiliar.
Airplay.
Oh, okay. Yes. I am familiar with that person, at least to some extent, not necessarily a massive extent, but yes.
Cool.
Again, like in terms of the whole project, like we've heard the only reason why I don't like full throatedly support, or I shouldn't even say like that I don't full throated. I do support any attempt at that, but the reason why I don't necessarily I can't get super excited about it is because a lot of people have attempted to do that, and it's very difficult to actually create an objective news outlet, even if that's what your genuine intent is to do. It's a very difficult prospect, and it's not a slight towards him that I say I am not. I'm not going to let myself get excited about it because, again, I would support that pretty wholeheartedly if it actually was able to be executed on. I hope that he's able to do it.
Anything else you want to say about Destiny before we move on?
No, I mean I'm not. I get into arguments with him, and I know he doesn't like me, and I'm willing to be kind of a provocateur towards him sometimes because I can be an asshole,
Well,
but
you just made a
you know,
movie about. You just made a video about him a couple days ago. I didn't
yeah,
watch it
but
though.
I actually wasn't like I didn't really take him down a peg with like I don't I don't really go after him in that video. I do go after a point that he made, but I don't like call him dishonest or like there are people who do that, and I just like I think that like he made a kind of a bad judgment call in doubting something that a journalist quoting another like It was the cookies thing. Like, did you hear about this? Do you know what this
Only
situation is?
vaguely. Was it one of the streamers was selling cookies?
No, 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 no. It's a different issue. It's
Oh, okay.
Destiny was on a debate with Counterpoints, or called Counterpoints. It's not Counterpoints. It's the offshoot of Breaking Points, the Crystal Ball and Cigar
Okay, not
podcast.
the streamer counterpoints.
No, not the streamer Counterpoints. Completely different. Like, that's why it needs to be specified. And I don't know why they picked that name, knowing that there's a channel that has some
I guess
following
I should disclose
called Counterpoint.
counterpoints is endorsing this project. Um, when the time, well, if I decide to do a Kickstarter, he will. But
Sure.
anyway, breaking points. Go ahead.
So again, so he was on there, and he made the point that Israel is stopping cookies from going into Palestine because sugar can be used to make Qassam rockets. It's a combination of sugar and fertilizer, and it's true that sugar and fertilizer can be done, but the idea that you could reverse engineer cookies in any, like, usable capacity, like to make the amount of sugar that you would need to make missiles with, it's not feasible in any way. And also, as reported in a frankly pro-Israel article, and what Ryan Grimm, who he was debating with, alluded to, was that probably the main source, or not probably, the main source of rockets and explosives for Hamas is actually unexploded Israeli rockets. That's where they get most of it from. It's an argument where he kind of makes, it's a bad point because it depends on the idea of reverse engineering cooked food to extract a single ingredient from, which is possible, but it is not an efficient process, and it certainly wouldn't be a usable process to make a bulk
I
amount of.
saw. I don't know if I saw the whole thing. I saw most of that debate though on breaking points between Destiny and the one Islamic guy. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I don't know his name.
Omar
Okay,
Badar.
Omar Badar. Yeah. Okay. I don't remember the cookie thing coming up. Maybe it was a side, very brief point, but
I mean, it was not actually a
or
very
maybe it came
long point, but
after I
it got
finished.
it
Because I mean, I didn't
caught
see the whole thing. I don't
a
remember.
clip of it caught on social media, and that was the reason why I covered it. I thought it was kind of an absurd point, and it possible to kind of talk about how people make inferences based on stuff that they've heard. And I really think that that's what this ultimately was. He dismissed something that was reported on by the New York Times, which was quoting the deputy chief of the Israeli police force, or and a consultant to their military, who was saying that was, like, it was basically him arguing with a reporting that was done in favor of Israel, that said that what he was doing. And also, the ultimate point is they actually are letting cookies into Gaza, and they are allowing sugar into Gaza. There actually, as far as I know, isn't a blanket ban on any of that stuff. It's just the idea that they should be able to control based on the idea of reverse engineering, like, cooked food for a single ingredient that you could not extract significant amounts of reliably enough to, make an artillery out of. It's a
Okay. Well,
it
we'll discuss the politics stuff more later on.
Sure.
Once if we get to that today, I think we will. But there's a few more news stories I want to cover. I think we can go over
Sure.
them relatively briefly. Or well, you can go as long as you want because it's good content. But so Paul Jawson, the organizer of Alt F4, I've reached out to him again to do an interview
Sure.
possibly, and he. I'm not going to reveal private correspondence, but he seemed open to the idea. And we're going to talk
Okay.
again soon about about possibly having a discussion about his conference and some of the concerns that have been raised. So he actually wants to talk about what you and I talked about our last part of the interview. he wants to talk
Hmm.
about that publicly as well and go over some of that. So it should be good if this happens. I hope it does. Nothing's set in stone yet, but that's a good important update, I think. Do you have any thoughts on this development?
Honestly, no, I'm not familiar enough with it
Well, we
to
talked
really
about it
make.
last time. The Alt F4 conference, the
I'm
one in
sorry,
the one in
I
Michigan,
confused this in my head. Okay, yes,
the one
the
in
one in
Michigan.
Michigan. Yes, okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I don't really have, I think, a lot more to say about it. I don't really. Is there any like? I'm sorry. I feel like I confused what you said
So
a
he's
lot.
possibly talking with me soon.
Oh, that's excellent. That's good to
Yeah.
hear.
So I know we were skeptical. Well, I wasn't necessarily skeptical, but some people were skeptical. I'm not even sure you were skeptical, but I think we both expressed a degree of skepticism that this would happen.
Sure.
But it does look like they are. He's possibly open to hearing out a variety of perspectives. Possibly.
That's
Nothing's set in stone
excellent.
yet.
That's wonderful to hear. That I think that I did express some skepticism towards
I
that,
think
and
we both
that's
did.
yeah. I mean, that's wonderful to hear. I mean, that's fantastic.
Well, we'll see what happens. Huh?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
So
good luck. Good luck.
you made a video about the Sweet Baby Inc. stuff. We talked about it last time a little bit. The DEI detected Steam group was temporarily hacked, but they quickly regained access. Did you see that story at all? Do you have any thoughts on that situation?
I didn't see that it was hacked. No. Like how
Someone
long did
gained
was
access. Just I think it was just a few hours or a couple of days at most, because
right.
they're already back in.
Okay.
One of the admins accounts, I don't know who, was
Hmm.
supposedly breached, according to them.
I would think that that's if I were the side that was being accused of all of the things that Sweet Baby Inc. is accused of, the kind of trying to control content and control how people talk and all of those types of things. I would think that even if somebody was just like, it's not like that, that they would have the sense not to hack and attempt to screw up by anything less than decent means. Like, I would think that if you believe, I guess that this is something a lot of people say, but unfortunately, it just is like if you believe in your point so much, why can't you just argue for it? I don't understand like the need to stop your enemies from talking. It's I don't like that.
Okay. Now, one thing that's happened since then is that Mark Kern, a former World of Warcraft developer, Grums on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
he
Yeah.
is taking this opportunity to. It seems like I want to be a little bit careful here, but it seems like he's grifting, or at the very least trying to prime his audience uh, to
Mm.
do anything. So he's, because of this recent event, the Discord account being hacked. He says, "So let's talk about what we learned from GamerGate 1. SBI detected
Mm.
was hacked today, and everyone needs to wake up. They are waging war on you. Will use any tactic and break the law to do so. They want you dead. The sooner you realize this, the better. What they've happily done and celebrated before, all GG vets will verify. DDoS you, hack your accounts, SWAT you, phone in bomb threats, plant CP in your forums and servers to report you, dox you, put bounties on your head, go after your families, fake death threats for themselves, paint you as an ist, quote unquote, and go after your career, jobs, etc., assault you in public, ban you from conventions, claim you are the one doing all of this when it's actually them. Nobody reasonable thinks they will go that far, but they do regularly. And if you continue to assume it's all just a misunderstanding, they'll exploit that weakness to hurt you. This is an ideological war where they must destroy you and the past. Protect yourself accordingly and realize what you're up against. That's what, and of course, obviously, well, actually, first off, we should point out that some of what Mark said is not true, okay? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's to my knowledge, and I'm one of the most researched people in this area. Not a single pro GamerGate person was swatted, not over the GamerGate stuff at least, to my knowledge. The bounties
Okay.
thing, I don't ever remember that happening either. But some of the stuff did happen, like the DDoS. Well,
Sure.
it
Yes,
was
I can
yeah.
remember DDoS
Well,
stuff.
it was an accidental DDoS they claimed later on. If we're talking about the Final Capital specifically, they said it was an accidental one, not a purpose. And then the hacking that There are allegations of that. Bomb threats, that did happen. The CP thing, planting fake CP, I believe that did happen. But doxing, that did happen. Going after your families, I don't know of any specific claims about that. Maybe it happened at some. Well, actually, I guess you could call what happened with that wasn't an anti-Gamergate person though, but like Wild Goose and what the Bill Wagner crew did, but they were third-party trolls. That wasn't anti-Gamergaters. Um, they did go after
Mm-hmm.
my family, I guess de facto, because I lived with my parents. The
Sure.
fake death threats, that's true, yeah. Um, paint you as an ist to go after your career and jobs. Somebody did that. Well, actually, Zoe Quinn did that. So basically, right, with Tim Saray. So that did happen. Assault you in public. That never happened. He made that up.
Yeah.
Ban you
What is
from
that?
he. Uh, yeah, I don't know. He made that up, I guess. Unless
I
he's
don't remember hearing
yeah.
anybody on either side
No,
actually make any allegation for
no. Yeah,
that.
that never happened. We would have heard about that. Ban you from conventions. That did happen. And then claim you're the one doing it when that it's actually them. That did happen. Yeah. Well, to some
Sure.
extent. Like, it depends on which specific thing you're talking about, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, he did make up some of this stuff. And of course, people have actually come to my Discord server and they're like, "Hey, Mark's claiming all this stuff. Is it true?" And despite him
Mm-hmm.
claiming all GG vets will verify, quite a few people remain skeptical of his list here. Anyway, the whole point of the list, he throws some real stuff in there, some fake stuff in there. Maybe he misremembered events. I'm not saying he necessarily lied on purpose. It possibly he just has a bad memory, um,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe he heard something, heard false information somewhere. Right? It's possible.
Sure.
But anyway, it seems like the
Yeah.
whole point of this. Actually, let me get your take, and then I'll give my own.
Well, I'll just quickly, because you sent me a tweet on this that I think I do agree very much with, is that it is irresponsible for him to kind of paint to his followers that there's just an amorphous blob of people out for them. I agree
That
with
was
that
my tweet.
very heavily.
Yes.
Yes, that's why I'm saying that I
Yeah.
agree very much with you on that. But as far as
You've cut out, sir.
say absolutely every one of those things is true. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I
you're,
did.
you're back. You're
I
back. Good.
maybe. Okay, cool. Let's say absolutely every one of those things is true. Let's just go ahead and say that. It would be a small portion of the other side doing that. It would be like, I don't think that all of those are true. I think the assault one is particularly obviously not true because, again, like you said, we would have heard on either side. Like if there was an assault, it'd be like that would be them using that would be them using that to win the day, so to speak. That would be their main thing that they kept coming back to over and over again
Oh, 1,000%.
forever. But let's say that even happened. Like, that's not everybody on the other side. It just automatically isn't. And the way that he is framing this tweet, it is very much oriented towards these people are all like this. And there are a lot of people who, and this is exactly how I became empathetic towards Gamergate. There are a lot of people who have genuine reasons to be involved in something that the thing isn't accomplishing. And again, I think that you could probably make, it wouldn't be this list, but it would be a list of unsavory things that almost any political movement, positive or negative, you could probably find evidence of that. Like, there are very unsavory aspects of most political movements, most fandoms for that matter. It's the way he's framing it. I think that the amorphous blob is probably the best way to say it. And I think that you really picked your words well there.
Thank you.
I don't like that. I just don't like that because, again, like if I just this is what I talk about with the team sports stuff. It's flattening and reducing something. And when that's the only thing that's represented to, let's say, Mark Kern's followers, they're going to think that this stuff is true because they aren't familiar with it. They aren't immersed in it. They weren't there
Right.
a lot of them weren't there a decade ago, et cetera, et cetera. And on the same
Well, and he
token,
was barely there too, so he really shouldn't be talking about this like he's some sort of supposed
sure,
expert. I mean, he lived through
yes,
it like all of us lived through it, but he's not
sure,
spent. He was very lightly involved. He talked about it sometimes,
hmm
but like the idea that he's some sort of expert is laughable.
yeah. I think that what he's doing is
He's an
unfair, and
expert in the way that you are, right?
yes, yeah, it's that's a very good way of putting it. He is an expert in that he has relevant experience.
Mhm.
That I mean, I don't know if that really you can say that's an expert, and in certain respects it is. But in this way, to have the authority to say all of this stuff and ascribe it to all of them, it's he's not an expert in that respect. That's not something he should have the authority to do as simply somebody who has relevant
And to be clear,
experience.
he never expressly called himself an expert, but he is passing it on like these are the great tomes of wisdom I've
I
learned.
mean, yeah,
Like that's what he's saying, basically, right?
the tone of this tweet
Yeah.
is look at what I know. I've been there. I've dealt with this. I understand
He's
it.
Alex
And you
Jones. He
need to
lived it.
understand this.
He was
You,
there.
I was there and you need to understand what you're up against. And he literally says that. Protect yourself accordingly and realize what you're up against. That's really not the case for the most part. And I'm going to say this with liberals. I'm going to say this with conservatives. I'm going to say this with left, right. It's most people don't do this stuff. It's just not how people operate. People aren't, again, like nobody reasonable thinks that they will go this far. And I'll tell you why nobody reasonable thinks that they will go that far is because most people will not go that far. Are there people who are extreme into some specific cause that they will, like the movie Bob, no bad targets, or no bad tactics, only bad targets? There are people who have that view. I'm not going to say that there aren't. And if anybody has engaged in a lot of that stuff, that type of person will.
And there are people
But
who make excuses for that kind of things too, and that for
certainly,
sure. But this idea that he's literally trying to convince
yes,
his audience that
yes,
this amorphous group. I'll just read what I said, because I called him out on this, of course. It's
yeah,
irresponsible for Mark Kern to rile up his followers into believing that an amorphous mob of people is going to kill them, and that is what he's doing. He is also quick
he
to make
says they
things up.
want you. He says they want you dead.
He literally says this, yes. But I didn't. Let me finish. He is also
Yeah,
quick to
sorry.
make things up, non-existent violence during Gamergate. Few, if any, would call Mark an expert on Gamergate, or a Gamergate expert, I said.
Mm-hmm.
Mark is also quick to attribute various things to the amorphous mob, some of which did occur, others of which didn't, i.e., assault,
Mm-hmm.
and others which may well have
Yeah,
been the actions of third-party trolls. Many who opposed Gamergate have done harm and spread misinformation. That should be opposed, and those who actually know about Gamergate have been working to do just that. Spreading misinformation and fear mongering about amorphous groups of people assaulting and murdering your followers isn't going to solve anything. Ask yourself this:
absolutely.
what games has Mark worked on in the past decade? What is his interest in all of this? If you want to learn about Gamergate, seek out a variety of perspectives. Many experts other than just I, Grimasaur, James Desborough,
Mm-hmm.
Thoughtful Salt, Porcelain Chips, Alex the Hatman Baldwin, Airplay Doc, and then on Blue Sky, I shouted out Savvy Lizer too, an expert on the other side.
Okay.
But she's not on Twitter,
I
so I
think
didn't shout her out on there.
I think you're asking the right question there. What interest is his in all of this? What is that?
Well, he
Why is he?
claims that he's working on a game right now, but he's on Twitter all the time, so we'll see if it comes out, I
Yeah.
guess, huh?
Well, I mean, I was on Twitter too much, and it stopped me from from making a game.
Well,
So
I'm on Twitter maybe too much too, though. At least my project is directly relevant to this. And I don't tweet
sure,
that much. I mostly like DM people.
yeah. Well, and also it's fair that your project involves actually researching stuff that is on Twitter. So
True.
it's kind of it's understandable in a way that somebody who is allegedly working on a video game being on Twitter all the time is not understandable.
Today's a happy day for me. Do you know why?
Why?
Well, not really. I mean, the truth is the truth, whatever it is. We'll see what happens with the story in the end. I sent you the cetacean stuff. So basically, really quick, um, there's this group, SETI, CETI. They are backed by a number of universities and other organizations.
Hmm.
They're researching cetaceans, whales, basically dolphins, to see if they have language. And they studied sperm whales specifically, and
Hmm.
they used artificial intelligence to analyze um, their communication,
Right.
their songs and things like this. And they
Hmm.
believe that they actually have a language, that they've discovered that cetaceans possess, not just it's not just random, it's an actual
Right.
complex language and alphabet, um, which
Which
is
is
like
badass.
which is an incredibly important story that I just found out about today, even though the story actually just dropped earlier this month. I'm a little bit late.
Yeah, you sent me them, and I wasn't able to make the time to read it, but it's definitely, I mean, it's badass. That's awesome.
Well, the implications of this, if obviously the researchers like we still need to study more. We need to find out how to,
Sure.
if what's all here and how we can decipher this if there's something there, which it looks like there is. But I've long
Hmm.
suspected that this was the case.
Hmm.
I'm not a researcher in this area. I actually thought about becoming one when I was younger. Um,
Hmm.
it was an area where I actively considered pursuing a career actually,
Right.
and a double major in marine biology and linguistics to study this. But I'm glad that people are, and well, humans wouldn't be the only intelligent species on this planet if this is true.
Which again, badass.
Yeah.
Something that would be really
Well,
cool
it's
to
going to
learn.
upend our entire understanding of the world and the universe, and like we don't know how we're going to. Well, first off, we can't keep them in. I'm already against cetacean slavery, um,
Sure.
keeping them in captivity, other than for like medical reasons or like some specific right. But of
Well,
course,
yeah,
if they have a
yeah. I
language,
mean,
we
there's
can attain their consent then if we're.
yeah, and certainly, like if they have language, then there is, I'm sure that there would be agency. That would be you would be able to actually ask, which is, I mean, even just like the idea of asking an animal something, like what we consider to be quote unquote unintelligent life, an animal. The idea that we could ask something is just like that
And
in of itself is wild, you know?
well, the implications are, well, let's just run through a couple of them, right? Like one of which is like, well, how do we legally incorporate the cetaceans into our society, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do they have their own like, well, because presumably we already know they already have their own social structures, and so
Mm-hmm.
like, do we have like a diplomatic like arrangement with them, or do we incorporate them within like the United Nations, or like within like how does this all work?
I mean, that's a very good question, and I think
Within the
we
citizens of our own
probably,
country, even like I don't know how we think about this, you know?
yeah, I think we also, if we're asking that question, we have to even go further, like in finding out the exact nature of what they're a capable of understanding, and b what their preferences for societal organization are. Um, if you're talking about a society that's been, because like you said, they do have current social structures. They exist in a way that is it is at least somewhat organized. So it's not as though they have no precedent that they would be coming from. I think that like the investigation as to uh firstly the exact nature of that, because I'm sure that there's more that we can know about that, just without even being able to speak with them.
Yeah, MIT did a press
And
conference. Well, not a press conference. They did like a public where they had some of the scientists come together and discuss their findings. So
mhm.
this is the real deal. This is
Yeah, no, it's the
yeah.
Smithsonian. Like
Yeah,
it's
Smithsonian. Yeah,
it's
well,
not.
they reported on it, and so did the New York Times and a bunch of other places too.
Yeah,
But like,
I'm more. The Smithsonian has a little bit less of an agenda than the New York Times typically does. And a lot of people consider the New York Times quite credible. I would consider on this subject, the Smithsonian reporting it indicates there's a pretty large amount of heft behind it.
yeah, and then the MIT conference. It's
Uh huh.
what we're not alone on this planet. Okay, we have to like
Yeah.
find some way to deal with this, unless like the research is bunk, which I don't think there's any reason to think it is.
I think if it's gotten
Well,
this
there's
far, it's probably at least something
well,
to
and
it.
there were a lot of previous studies too that sort of indicated that they have like different languages because like the different pods at different areas of the world, they have all have different sounds and stuff. And so
Sure.
like there was already reason to think like if it was just random, why are they using different languages?
Right.
And this is just sperm whales. Like it could be the case that sperm whales are more evolved than other types of cetaceans, right? Potentially, and that
Right.
this is
Right.
like a unique sperm whale thing. And I mean, I don't know if that would be the case. And like they also know about the orcas too, about how they have the
Hmm.
most was it like this
Hmm.
was it spindle neurons or something?
I,
Um,
I I wouldn't say that I know that amount
no, it
of
wasn't. I'm
on
sorry. It
this
was
subject, but
they look at well, they use these methods to study. I'm not an expert on this area, but I looked into it a little bit. Anyway, huge fucking deal. Also, what do the religions
it's
do, right?
excellent. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's tons of if they are legitimately intelligent life, like there's tons of implications. Religion, culture, like there's just the language, diplomacy. I think the question of diplomacy and how we interface with them once we are able to communicate with them, it's such a fascinating question.
Well, and I hope we don't fuck it up.
Yeah. No, I mean that's part of why it's a fascinating question. And there's a lot of ways it could go right. There's a lot of ways it could go wrong. I mean, we, it's arguable our society has not reached a level of development where we're at any kind of equilibrium. And I think that you could argue that without our interference, they mostly operate at some type of an equilibrium, even if we don't necessarily entirely understand it. They operate in a much more I hesitate to say the word sustainable because it has a lot of implications that I'm not attaching to it. But as far as I am aware, in a more literal usage of the word sustainable, the whales operate in a much more sustainable fashion than we do currently.
So the religion aspect specifically, it could go a number of ways, and probably different
Hmm.
religious groups will have their own thing. Like some of them might just deny it's real at all. Like they could literally be talking to one probably, and they'd still like through
Hmm.
a translator or something, and they'd still probably reject it because, or I don't know. I mean, like religions adapt and grow over time. There might be die-hard sects that don't believe it, right? But I think most probably would accept it. Um, but what do they do with that information? Like they might try to convert them, right? Like, hey, we got like
I hope we don't do that.
I hope that I think
That's
they have the right to do that if they want to be
yeah, I
missionaries
guess
and they
that's
want to.
true.
I mean,
I
like,
guess that's
but
true.
obviously the cetaceans, if they're listening to this, if they're reading my book, if we
I
find some
guess
way to translate that, if they're listening to this or reading this book in the future, like because we find some way to communicate with them, um, just obviously take into account a wide variety of perspectives. Don't just believe that the first missionary you encounter is telling you the truth about humans or about anything. Just
sure.
obviously examine things critically. That's what I would say to them.
And that's kind of the thing that I was getting at is I hope that institutionally speaking, we don't whatever we're using to explore communication with them, I hope that is not the immediate purpose of it. Like
Right, that shouldn't be the first
down
thing.
the
Now,
line
like as we
after
integrate
it's
them into
normalized,
yeah,
yes, as it's normalized and we have like individual conversations and
hmm
those types of things, I think that that's a very
not our
different
first
situation.
encounter. We are the gods. Actually, by the way, I don't want to let you know that. You know, come in
Well, I
like
mean, we're in a lot of ways, yes, we are because we are capable of wreaking total havoc on them if we wanted to, and that is also a prospect that I think is probably not necessarily a good thing to leave that stone unturned. I think that there's a lot of uh, procedural and protocol implications in humans contacting an intelligent species that man, that stuff needs to like we need
we need to be very
lawyers, we
careful, but
need
we should do it 1,000%.
philosophers.
We have to do it, right? We
Well, we
have
have to. Yes,
we
no,
have
you
to do
have
it.
to. If they're intelligent, we have.
We can't just be like,
If they
well,
are,
we're just gonna keep killing you and putting you in cages in fucking
yes, if
sea world, right? Wait, that cannot be the future we live in. We have to have
if
some sort
they're
of equal coexistence. That's what it has to be.
if they are intelligent and we are intelligent, it is our obligation to attempt to normalize some form of relations with them at
Yes,
very least.
yes.
I don't think that we're fulfilling our end of the life bargain, so to speak, as a species, if we don't do that. Like, I just think that is, if they are sentient and intelligent, it is
Well, all animals. Well, most
insane
animals are
not to.
sentient, yeah. But no, if they're
Yeah,
intelligent
well,
and sentient. Oh, you said both. So sorry, I shouldn't
yeah,
have.
it's both. It
You
needs to
both.
be both.
Yeah. Well, does it need to be both though? What if they're sapient but
I
not
mean,
sentient?
that's a good question.
Like an artificial
I don't
intelligence,
know.
for instance,
Maybe,
that were.
maybe.
Anyway, we're getting. Anything else you want to say about the cetacean story? I think this is the most groundbreaking story this year so far. By far. Like the fact is, the evidence we have right now is leaning heavily, and there was already evidence before this. A lot of
Sure.
evidence too
Yes.
that this
No. It's
might have been the
definitely been
case.
discussed
But
before.
yes, but like this is the story of the year, I think.
Hopefully,
Unless,
more
well,
people.
we'll see what happens the rest of the year, right? Maybe like an
Yeah, I
asteroid's
was
going to
just
come
gonna
and
say,
destroy half the planet or
hopefully,
something. But
sure, but hopefully, it's given the attention that it deserves. Like, in all honesty, now that I'm more familiar with it, I'll probably put it out there. I don't know if people will.
make a video on it.
I don't know
A
if I'm a very
documentary.
great. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's something that making it. Actually, you know what? That's not a terrible idea, because talking about it from an institutional perspective, again, like my instinct immediately was to say, institutionally, when we are exploring this means, like, we really need to not like advocate some kind of agenda to them in our as we are normalizing communications, because that could potentially be a serious problem both for them and for us.
Mhm.
um but like, as relations are normalized, that's a different story. But I like, that's super interesting.
Well, are you so you don't want to promote Marxist Leninism to the cetaceans?
I don't think so. I think if they have like, Marxism Leninism, to me, is not something to like. I don't see it as a. It certainly has an ideological version. There is a version that is simply like holding up the principles of X, Y, and Z. Whereas what I am coming from is seeing it as a process of analysis, which is like, there's more than one way to look at it. And I don't come from it from the prescriptive outcome way. So no, I would not be a person who came at it this type of a situation from the perspective that we need to teach the whales Marxism Leninism.
Well, there's already some countries. Chats talked about them too, but I was, the Faroe Islands, Japan. Well, I think technically it's like quote unquote illegal in Japan, except for scientific whaling or whatever. But like there's various countries that do still do whaling. Now that's obviously going to have to stop. Like the
Yeah.
exceptions that we've made for the indigenous whaling, for instance, it's probably going to
Mm.
have to go away.
It better.
Well, it has to, right? You're murdering people at that point.
Yeah, like, I don't really give a shit whatsoever about how indigenous a person is. If you're like it, like, let's say an indigenous person walked off of their own property of whatever nature, whether it be reservation or in the modern sense, and just started killing people. Like, that wouldn't be something we would tolerate, and for good reason. We absolutely should not tolerate any killing of whales,
Well, and there's also
with the understanding that they are intelligent.
accidental destruction of their ecosystem is going to have to be something we take into account to a higher degree. Um, right? Because like if it is the case that like certain types of sonar are dangerous to them,
Absolutely. Yes,
right?
very much. Yes. Well, certain types of sonar are dangerous to them anyways. Like,
Well, that's what
uh,
I've not looked into that super close, but I've heard that's the case. I don't.
sonar can literally rip tissue apart. It can be pretty beefy. It's not. It's. I mean, it's not necessarily the immediate case. What, like, with every use of sonar, but certainly it's something that we would, I mean, in theory, really need to reevaluate.
Yeah. Anyway, we're about to jump into to continue the games journalism section. Then we're going to get to some other sections too. Hopefully, I know you said you couldn't go as late tonight. First off, two things. One, do you need a break? Two, um, what's your deadline on the time tonight?
I'm gonna say probably about 9:30 my time, which is about an hour and 10 minutes more, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. And do you need a
Cool.
break?
No, I'm good. I
Okay.
probably can handle. from here. Actually, you know what? Let me check on my kids. I'll be right back. All
Yeah,
right.
cool. I'll step out for a second too.
Okay. All right. See ya.
All right, I'm back. Sorry for the dead air. Now I just want to spam Tachyon with parrot videos. Well, I don't. The parrot thing is probably different. I've not like done research into like parrot intelligence. Um, maybe there's something there. Actually, birds. I think that is an area where communication should be studied further too. Like especially since we now have this cetacean thing, which there was already a lot of evidence for, I believe. Um, already evidence pointing that direction rather. But you know, if people want to study parrots too, they can.
Hello.
Hey, I'm here.
How you doing?
Good, good, you.
I'm good. The kids had a little bit of a problem that they needed worked out. So luckily, that was I think a good time to stop for a second.
Well, that's good at least that it was resolved.
Yes. Sorries were
Oh,
said.
that's a damn good question from chat. Holy fuck. Thank you, Key.
Let me see.
What would be the first question you would ask sperm whales?
Woof. Wow.
So how does the sex work exactly? No, interspecies. What is it? What is the Garrus meme, right? The interspecies copulation or whatever he's talking about.
Just start showing them pictures and be like, wood? Pictures of various whales.
Well, so is that gonna be like a thing? Like, how would that? So humans, like, presumably, we would allow humans and cetaceans, if it was consensual, to get married and like do sexual things, I guess, right? If
Boy, that's a
what do we think about that?
that I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I think about that. Like the intelligence completely, it changes. The implication of it
Well, it's not
because
bestiality, right? It's just it would be the
yeah,
same as you having sex with an alien or marrying an alien, right?
yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about. Like there are people who like play Mass Effect or something and specifically target one of the alien races, etc.
Who would do
And it's
that?
like who who among us?
Yeah, who exactly?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it would be something I'd be interested in personally. Certainly not. In fact,
I
I
wouldn't be
don't. I
closed
don't.
off to the idea necessarily, but
I would say that I would be closed off because I would probably have a large amount
well, you couldn't
of
have kids with
problem.
them unless they like did like super advanced technology that's way beyond our.
Yeah, that would be That would be
But you
technology
could
that.
have like a yeah. So go ahead.
Well, in terms of technology, that we're entering into like massive
That's
hypotheticals.
sci-fi
Yeah,
territory at this
exactly,
point.
exactly.
Yeah. Gene
But I
editing on
mean,
a
for
level that
me,
we're like, yeah.
exactly. For me, it's not something I'd be interested
You
in.
could adopt it
But
though.
as a question, it's a very interesting one. And it's not one that I think I have an answer for because I don't have a gut reaction to it, if I'm completely honest. I don't have like a disgust reaction. I don't have a because the intelligence for me completely changes the whole aspect of it. Like part of when somebody like talks about bestiality and something, I'm disgusted because it's kind of like them taking advantage of something
Right,
in a
yeah.
way. I think that that's awful, like on multiple levels. I think that it's sickening that you would engage with in that man. I don't want to use any language that's going to get you demonetized or flagged or anything, but I think that that is a large source of disgust because my initial reaction to that question was not you. I'm not like attracted to a whale or anything, but it wasn't like because it changes that. It changes the dynamic
No, you're only
entirely. It's
attracted to
not a
catfish.
person. Yeah. Uh, but it seems like I was maybe the not intelligent one. That was a good setup. That was a good setup. Well
Thank you.
done.
Well, I had one earlier
Um,
too, but the cheese ball thing because we were talking about if it was a low blow for Destiny to do that. And I was gonna say I was gonna say that we had the expert of low blows here.
yeah, no. I am very much the expert of low blows. I really, again, I like, I don't know how we're going to get through this year and manage to get the attention of Steve Harvey, but I think there needs to be a 20-year reunion
Yeah, well, it's at
of
the
the
Alt
Nutchick.
F4 conference. That's gonna happen. To fly
Yeah.
you and him out, they're gonna make that happen.
The problem is definitely Steve Harvey there. I think he'd be the harder.
Most likely. I did tag him on
I would.
Twitter, but he didn't seem to notice. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think he pays a lot of attention to. I mean,
I don't.
people talking about kicking themselves in the nuts for one.
Well, I mean, he brought
But
you on his show to do it, so like he cares a little bit.
yeah, I mean, to some extent, sure, but also like I think priorities change in 20 years. He is a much more, I think, credible. He's not like explicitly just a stand-up comedian now. He's also, I think, a life guru in a lot of ways.
So
He has self-help books and stuff like that.
Porcelain Chips asks, "What's down there?" That would, I guess, I presume that'd be your question, Porcelain. But so I kind of cucked your answer because I wanted to make that joke. Or actually, not a joke. I mean, interspecies relations, I wouldn't be opposed to it necessarily. I mean, like on a moral level, I'm not opposed to it. But like on a personal level, I don't think I would be either. I wouldn't be closed off. But anyway, what would be your first question to the cetaceans?
I don't. I mean, again, it would be
To the sperm whales, I guess specifically, since those are the ones
yeah,
that were
since that would be who we would be talking to, ostensibly speaking.
first, at least. Yeah.
I think it would probably. I don't know if I have it exactly worded, but it would be about. It would be about organization. I would want to know how things are, and this is again my first question to them, which means I would assume that a lot of other people have asked a lot of other questions to them at this point. But my interest would be organizationally. How does their society work? How do you organize this thing? You know.
What if they don't like humans? I don't think that's the case generally. I mean, like, well, it depends on the individual cetacean, right? And some of the
I mean, let's
pods
not.
do and don't.
Let's
But
make sure. Let's make sure to keep the identity politics away from the whales that we've been hunting relentlessly for centuries. Let's do that.
well, I
I
mean,
think
like
that.
humans might indeed owe them like some degree of like societal
I
reparations for
think.
destroying their
I think that
ecosystems. Like I
yes.
don't know, like
No, I think that we will owe them, but like we need to keep them. We need to make
at
sure
least
that
we
they
need to
don't get
focus on
on.
the future though, mostly. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, but
Well,
like,
that's why I'm saying that
yeah.
though, because that the identity politics is very, very oriented in the past. It's very, very oriented towards um, taking identity and making it the
But
only thing,
yeah.
and historically flattening people to anything that was adverse for their identity group in the past.
So
That is very, very much what identity politics is, and I want to keep the whales that we've relentlessly hunted for centuries away from that.
so
I want to just do let's make it right with them, okay? Let's do that.
So Key in the chat says, what if they are intelligent, but they have the intelligence of a child, let's say, like a 12-year-old or a 3-year-old or something like that.
Well, then
I don't,
I can't really ask them about the organizational style of their
I don't. Well, so
society very easily.
they would have a different kind of intelligence, like an adult cetacean. I think we would still have to recognize as being like an adult in a normal society. I don't. They're. It's a different mind. I think that
Yeah.
most likely
Also, a
they're
completely
entire.
different environment.
It's a right. So like, well, that could be one explanation too for like the Fermi paradox too, right? Because like
Hmm.
we always assume, oh, well, if a species has intelligence, they're going to build spaceships. But like, well,
Yeah.
what if well, you don't just need intelligence though, right? You need like opposable thumbs and shit. You need a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different things to organize a society. And if your environment that you evolve in is that you're a fucking giant ass creature in the ocean, like it's probably not going to be building too many spaceships anytime soon. So,
Hmm.
like that's one possible, explanation for like
What does ADHD
intelligence
look
could be
like for a
quite
whale?
common. Intelligence could be quite common. It's just that
What?
intelligence plus the other things that we
Here's
need to build spaceships or radio
here's my thought.
transmitters.
Here's my thought. What does ADHD look like for a whale? Because I don't think that they have the amount of stimuli that we would have. So like is it shifting topics and focus? What's the rate at which we have to start asking the question, does this whale have ADHD?
Anyway, getting to GamerGate. Uh, well, we literally last time I asked you, what do you think about games journalism? And we went on for like 45 minutes, I think it was,
Yeah, I
unless I'm
think that
mistaken.
that was a good conversation too,
It
I think.
was, it was. I'm glad we had that, and there was some good content in there too. Too, like we talked about the Battlefront stuff. I think that was a good.
Right, yeah.
And then what do you do from here? Like, how do you build a better games press, given that the incentives and
Mhm.
stuff are aligned as they are? But anyway,
Mhm.
question two of games journalism is how responsive to calls for reform do you think the games press was?
Not responsive. Not particularly. I do think that there perhaps was a problem of I'm going to say that there's a two-pronged problem there. The first prong was that a lot of people were again distracted away from calling for reform from institutions by directing them towards individuals. But I would also say on the other side of that coin that that is a tactic by institutions that is used to keep people from holding them to account. Like that is I think a tactic that we can ascribe to basically any institution. They will do anything possible to divide and conquer. That is, it's a very simple thing. If there's a thing that they could be in the wrong over, or could be held to account, or could be forced to change that they don't want to change, the divide and conquer tactic is very often the response. So, I mean, do we look at that as an organizational problem, or do we look at that as an institutional problem? I'm not exactly sure the correct response to it, but I would say that um, that problem is why they aren't responsive to some extent, at very least, not necessarily the entire reason, but to some extent, the fact that organizationally speaking, the entire mass isn't specifically going after an institution in their call for reform or whatever. Um, I think that a lot of people ended up with a lot of different targets, and I think that that was a lot of the problem. Is if you had it focused, if you had focus and were able to leverage all of the um, all of the power, I guess probably the best way to put it, the collective power of everybody involved. If it was all focused on one institution demanding one reform until they relent on that, I think you're much more likely to get them to relent on it. And I think that that's where the question of is this an organizational problem or an institutional problem? Obviously, the institutions are going to do anything they can to divide and conquer. So, organizationally speaking, that's perhaps the only place that you could change anything. But is it even? I don't know if it's possible with the way things currently are I don't know, but I will say they were not. They absolutely were not responsive, and I think to get them to be responsive, the interfacing that we as normal individual human beings without an institution behind us, we have to figure out a different way to leverage what we have against them, I think.
If we find a way, I'm sorry. I want to get back to game shows. Just want to say this real quick. If we find a way to like, obviously communicate with them, sure, but like if we find a way to do so with like
With
text
some
too. I don't know
degree
if
of
they can
leverage.
read. Right. No, no. Well, leverage. What do you mean?
Oh, no, you're talking about the whales again.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So I want to
Sorry, I thought
translate
you were
my.
talking
I
about
want to
games journalists. I was like,
translate my book into a way that the whales can understand, the cetaceans can understand.
sure,
I would
yes,
want to do. I would have
yes.
to. I would be willing to do like a crowdfunding campaign or something just for that. Like 5 years from now, just so we make this happen.
I mean, that would be just interesting to find out how a whale reacts to
So wait a second.
information.
This human and that human, and then the video game. What the fuck's a video game? And
Yeah, the
well,
reaction.
they
Exactly.
wait they. There'd be a whole market for that. There'd be a whole market for a lot of stuff, right? Assuming that like we incorporate them into our society, or we have like positive diplomatic relations with them, as a separate legal entity. Jesus, we're not gonna get off this topic.
Mm-hmm.
But like there'd be video game companies would presumably like how would they make money though, right? Would they have jobs? I mean, they could, right? If they were equal citizens, they could work whatever job they wanted to. So like
Sure.
they could earn
I,
money and then buy video games that they play underwater or something, right? I mean, like it could be a thing.
I mean, obviously, you'd have to figure out a way for the content delivery to happen, and
Sure, yeah.
also for them to be able to interface with the content. But that's stuff that, I mean, that's a lot less of a hurdle, I think, than whether or not they're intelligent. I think that that's really once we've gotten over that and we've gotten the communication barrier. I think developing technology that could help their lives is, or just even entertain them, is not that absurd of a prospect.
No, not at all. It's going to happen probably. Well,
Yeah,
and that's
no,
good. I
most
think
likely.
we should have a cultural exchange, and I want to see cetacean artists and cetacean movies, like made by them, and showing a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
completely alien perspective. I want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we got to get back to games. I'm sorry. Um,
I'm sorry, I didn't realize
well,
that you were
it's a
talking
good,
about
it's a
whales.
good, it's a good, it's really a good. We can work it into the GamerGate stuff. So if you were the editor in chief and one of your cetacean employees, no,
Well, I mean, it does
treat them
bring
the
an
same as any
interesting.
other employee. That's what you do. All
It
right.
does
Anyway,
bring a very interesting question though, which is kind of like sometimes when I'm thinking about Gamergate, I'm thinking about how on earth some like human person who doesn't understand any of the context or any of the information that's necessary to really understand what it is, explaining it to that kind of person. Like this means the implications of this are that every single possible thing in human society is like Gamergate in
to
that
them,
respect
right?
because
Well, I mean, like
because
we have interacted with them for thousands of years, right? So like
sure,
they have some understanding of human. I'm sure they have opinions about us, a
I would
lot of
wager
different
that I
opinions
would
about us.
wager that's true. I would wager that's true. But I would wager they don't have any idea what MSNBC is.
That's probably true. That's I would agree with you there,
Or even
probably.
or the concept of journalistic integrity. Like
Or they cracked our language like centuries ago, and they're kind of
yeah,
like laughing
they've
to
just
each
been
other
paying
about us.
attention. like, like passing a joint around, having
Yeah,
a laugh at the humans.
yeah. But no, that's a
Could
very
be,
interesting.
could
That's an
be.
alien mind.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
really is. Chat Porcelain says mammal minds are similar. Well, I don't know if we have no way of understanding the context. It's you know what it is.
Well,
I'm
the
reading the book
mind,
Accession. It's an outside context problem. That's what's happening
the mind could be very similar. Yes, that's. I mean,
in
that could be entirely
developmental
true. But
types. Sure, you're right.
yes, like
But how
there's a
they
lot of
think.
physical similarities that could exist, and the neurons could interact in very similar ways. But you have to also consider that the environment that they've existed in, the ocean, is completely different than the environment that we exist in. In no way could a human being understand what that is like and never having a break of anything other than that their entire lives. It's
Also,
it's not an experience any human has had at this point.
1,000%. Also, like the video, people, and leave a comment too. I don't care what you comment. Yell at me, tell me I'm a terrible person. I don't care. But leave a comment. Preferably nice ones, I guess. Not even nice ones, but truthful ones. Don't just like make shit up. But yeah, leave comments. I don't care. I like comments. Also, were there any games journalism reforms you would have liked to have seen happen?
That's a good question. I have to think about that for a second, I think. Well, first off, again, like any of the alleged things that happened, it should just automatically be institutionally like not allowed. Like there should be consequences for a journalist who like there I know that there are people who think that whatever the alleged things that Nathan Grayson did, there are people who think that he didn't do those things, and I don't want to argue with those people. But what I want to say is that consequences and specific protocols need to be created, or if not created, made public for accountability reasons that make that, and we're obviously just talking about like games journalism right now. Like I think that there are much wider implications for journalism in general, but for games journalism, just not being able to have those, there needs to be some kind of barrier set up to those outside relationships, not necessarily even to individuals in the way that they've done it, but some forms of institutional relationships as well. Like it's very easy for fairness in perspective presented by a journalist can be influenced. It's very, very easy for that, and I think that there needs to be more done in terms of preventing that kind of influence from impacting a journalist's work. Obviously, that goes across the board outside of games journalism as well, but I think that's a real problem in games journalism from my perspective anyways. I mean, I have never worked at Kotaku's, I don't know how they work internally. I don't know what their concerns are internally, but from an outside perspective, I would hope that would be something that could be taken more seriously even now, because I don't know that it's a lot different now. I feel like there's a lot of obviously the relationships in question with Grayson and Zoe Quinn are sexual, but I'm not speaking specifically
Even if it
to
weren't,
sexual.
they had a very close personal
Correct,
friendship,
correct.
which was
That's
undisclosed.
and I think that there's friendships, and there are institutional relationships that I think are comparable, if not necessarily exactly the same thing, but are similar problems. And I think that kind of stuff needs to be taken more seriously. I think there needs to be protocol, there needs to be accountability, and I don't know that there really has been a lot that has changed in that respect. I could be wrong, because again, I don't know the internal workings of Kotaku, for instance, but that would be my primarily, especially coming from the perspective of reevaluating from my perspective what Gamergate, what people who didn't get rabbit holed towards any individual really cared about. That would be, I would hope, kind of the number one concern, because if you were able to either disincentivize or even stop those types of relationships from happening, I think you have a marked improvement over what everything is just in terms of capability. I don't know that fixes every problem, obviously, but I think that would be a big improvement. And obviously not just with Kotaku, but with any outlet selling itself as actual journalism and games journalism and saying that we hire games journalists and stuff. It's one thing if you're a hobbyist organization. It's one thing, because if you notate that and you say we're not journalists, we're hobbyists, or like, I think being clear about what you are is also helpful. those types of things. Like, I think that a lot of what passes for games journalism is hobbyism, and I don't think I would see it as a big problem if it billed itself as that. You know, I feel like you shouldn't be stopped from engaging in hobbyist reporting. It's just that's not really quote unquote journalism. You know.
All right. Um, if you were the editor-in-chief of a gaming website and some of your employees were accused of ethical violations, what would you have done?
Am I an owner of the institution or just an editor?
Editor-in-chief, the chief editor.
Well, my first thing would be, do I have okay? So, as editor in chief, do I have the capability of suspending, or
Yes, you
is that
have
like a board decision?
carte blanche to do basically anything you want, essentially, for this hypothetical, let's say. Well, any reasonable power that you would expect an editor-chief to have, like, so you could suspend people and, let's say, or fire
Okay,
them, and then
I would suspend people involved pending investigation, and I would also, um, I would go to the people who own the outlet, and I would begin working with them on, do we have protocol for this, in terms of what our finding, like, for me, suspension pending investigation is, you do that right away. There's no like,
over
you
an
don't have to stop.
allegation.
I think that it's not necessarily something that you can blanket. Like, if it is it's not something I could say that I would blanket do for any allegation whatsoever. But if the allegation is something that directly undermines the credibility of the outlet, like the allegations we were just speaking about a moment ago, I think those do undermine the credibility of the outlet. Uh, that would be, to me, suspension pending investigation. Not necessarily suspension without pay. I don't necessarily think that that's like, I don't think that they should, just on an allegation, have their life basically taken away from them, unable to pay their rent, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that having them continue to operate amid that allegation, if it is something that actually undermines the credit of the organization, it's not something that is acceptable to do, I think. So that would be my first move. My second move would be going to the ownership and being like, what's our protocol? And if they don't have protocol, I want to attempt to establish protocol. Um, Meaning consequences, etc. If the allegation is found to be true, and it's something that undermines the credibility of the organization, that person probably has to be terminated from the organization, because it's
Well, credibility
necessary.
is what your entire organization, in theory, should be built on, right?
Exactly,
Or not
exactly. If
entirely,
you
but in large, huge degree. Basically, reputation, right? Basically.
Absolutely, well, journalism in our current system, if you do not have credibility, you don't have anything.
Right.
Like, it's if you are known to be making stuff up, you there's no purpose. Like, you can't, if you're known to make stuff up, you're not a journalistic outlet. Like, you're fiction. Like, I mean, if people, again, that's why I say, if it's hobbyist press, if it's just like publishing press releases and saying how awesome they are, that's fine. I like, this is a free country. You should be allowed to do that. But it's billing itself as journalism is, maybe, I disagree with that. But we're talking about journalism, and we're talking about what's necessary to run a credible journalistic outlet. I think it's suspension pending investigation. If you find out the thing is true and it's something that's actually a danger to the outlet's credibility, that person has to go. It's just not. I don't see any other path. Like, there could be protocol outside of that. There could be circumstances that complicate it. But to me, if it's in a straightforward situation, that's my. If I have unlimited power, as far as I am aware that an editor in chief has, that would be my path that I would take.
Do you think there is still a role for good games journalism in the world? And if so, what does that look like to you?
I think there's a role. We talked about it some last time. The idea of getting information out of companies regarding games that are releasing, in terms of like bugs and things that they like to keep away from the public. Like, I understand that it's very difficult because it involves developing relationships with people who would be willing to endanger their jobs by leaking information. But potentially, you are talking about sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a serious amount of money. It's you could be like a lot of the time when, for instance, they sneak microtransactions in a week later. Obviously, that's not something they make the decision during that sometime between release and when they put the microtransactions in a week later. That's a dishonest tactic, and it's something that they would have had to have planned because it doesn't take a week to write the store's code. I feel like that's the kind of it's very difficult to imagine a situation where that's an easy thing to have going. But man, the amount of money that moves around in the gaming industry, you would hope that that there would be some way for that to be possible. And again, it is asking people to leak information. It is asking people to do things that are potentially dangerous to their jobs, which is why anonymity and sourcing and all of those types of things, you would need real journalists that actually care about that, people that, in my opinion, go well beyond what the reputation that games journalism has. Like, in theory, any type of journalism is legitimate journalism and has a role. But again, we're talking about so much money moving around, and a lot of the time, very dishonest things that companies do. Exposing that, it would be a fantastic. I wish that there was more of that. I feel like I just really wish that there was more of that.
Are you would you be willing to become a games journalist? When you basically with your channel, basically?
Not with my channel. No, I feel like I don't. I don't have the journalist. I have kids. I have family. I have a lot of stuff that I think precludes me from doing that kind of attempting to get into the business of a multi-million-dollar corporation. So specifically, because I worked in radio back in 2017. I've had a couple of different shows on radio through the years, but back in 2017, I was on the radio in Southwest Michigan on WSJM, the news talk station, and I had a 2-hour talk show every afternoon. And I talked about things that in the national news and in the local news. And one of the sponsors was the Whirlpool Corporation. And also, they are a corporation that spends a lot of money kind of attempting to control Benton Harbor, Michigan, which is where the radio station was located. And I would talk about that, and it became a problem, so much so that the radio station itself was actively pressuring me in ways that they knew would get me to leave, because they couldn't fire me over it because I hadn't done anything that was an actual problem. I probably could have sued them if they had fired me over some of the things, because I'd done nothing that was an issue. But they did put pressure on me, and I did eventually quit because I couldn't keep relying on that if that's what they were going to do, because that would imply that they would be looking for reasons that if I did something incorrectly or didn't put out what they wanted at some point, there would be grounds to fire me. So I needed to find something that was more stable. That was not a serious journalistic position, and it was just me wanting to talk about local community things, and this large corporation kind of meddling with things in ways that I didn't particularly like. And that wasn't a particularly serious position. And if I had been relying on it, if it was a big bulk of my income or all of my income, I would be putting myself in a position that, my children and my family would be, in my opinion, not necessarily in danger, but in maybe financial stress if certain things happen. Which is why I was also saying it would be very difficult to find people who are willing to leak information, especially with some of the watermarking technology they've been talking about lately, in terms of leaking footage and things like that. I don't know. It's a difficult thing because I don't think I'm in a position that it would be responsible of me as an adult and a parent to get into that type of work directly, which is partly why I'm a more broad economic critic for the most part. But I don't know. I think that's a good question because I think that, from where I'm standing, it wouldn't be responsible for me as an adult and a parent to do. But that would be the main reason I wouldn't do it. I certainly have a desire to see more of those types of situations, that type of reporting. I would love to see that. And if it was something that I wasn't worried about putting the amount of effort necessary to where I would have to become financially dependent on it, and then worrying about how to be financially dependent on it, I think if those things weren't obstacles, my answer would be yes, but I think that those things are obstacles.
I'm debating if I should ask you to give faster answers or shorter answers because we have like 45 questions to go or whatever. We're gonna have to
I
do
can
part
try to
three, of
give shorter
course.
answers.
But
Sure, yeah, I can try to give shorter answers.
well, on
Yeah,
airplay.
I'm perfectly fine doing part 3, part 4. It's really fine. I enjoy
Okay.
doing these. Like
Okay.
I think that it doesn't hurt because we've come up with some pretty interesting conversations. I've enjoyed them
We
anyways.
have. I'm okay with doing it too. I'm just concerned that well, you know what, fuck it. We'll just give as long of an answer as you think you need to give, and if I think you're going too
I'll
long, I'll cut
try.
you off.
I'll try not to ramble so much.
Okay.
I will keep that
I want to
as a
get through
conscious
games journalism
consideration.
today at the very least. We got so. All right. Anyway,
Sure.
some GamerGate supporters believed that pressuring advertisers to pull out would be a good way to convince gaming publications to initiate ethical reforms. What did you think of this strategy?
I think it's close. I don't think that it's quite there because what you end up doing is focusing on a lot of different companies. I think focusing on one company is always the way to go. Like the more energy you can put towards one specific thing until you get a result, the better is possible. So like let's say rather than because I know they sent out a lot of emails to various advertisers. I think if you picked one advertiser and to attempt to, firstly, educate them as to the problem that you have with the outlet. Secondly, ask them to withhold advertising or, ask them whatever your specific ask is. I think that doing it in that way, where it's kind of, I think you would end up with more results because I don't think you can. I think the more you spread people out, the less good it is. And I think that there are some people who were thinking that way, if I remember right. Because I do remember some people talking about stuff like this.
Well,
So I
Nicole
don't know.
Sunt, when I interviewed her, she talked about how she would only do it for the products she purchased for. Um, so if she purchased for a product, she would write, personal letters, I believe.
Right. Which I think as an individual makes
Other people did
sense.
that too, not just her, but
Yeah, and like I said, as an
well, no, the
individual that makes
personal letters at
sense. But
least.
if you're organizing people though, and I think that it's really important to do that if you want an actual result. If you're just relying on people making the choice to send a letter to somebody, it's I mean, I'm not saying it can't have a result because it's possible that everybody has the same impulse to contact, X, Y, and Z. It's possible, but to organize and actually, go after a specific contradiction that you're attempting to change, that to me requires people like it requires. I'll say I don't. I think that just going with stuff that you personally consume or deal with, I think that it's not necessarily enough. And the reason I say that is because the point of marketing isn't to reach the people who already purchase something. It's to
Well, it depends on the
create
marketing,
more
right?
demand. Well, yes, I guess that's true. Yeah, there are multiple types of marketing, but like let's say with, energy drink marketing, for instance, that marketing is oriented at getting more customers. Which if you're not a customer and I would think that a potential customer is as valuable to them as a current customer. If there's something that you actually, I mean, we're talking about demographics, like the gaming demographic specifically. And I'm sorry, I'm trying not to ramble, but we're talking about the gaming demographic specifically, and they're targeting that demographic. And if you're a potential purchaser in that demographic, I think contacting
What is
them,
the gaming demographic? Because
people who are interested in games, there are certainly,
well, that's
product.
yeah, that's a subset of the population, but like it's also like a very diverse subset too.
Oh, sure, but there are various products that are certainly associated with gaming.
Sure, like
Snack food,
computers and well, see, but
computers.
that's
Yes.
snack food, yeah. But
I don't think that I'm not saying that it's a
right,
good thing that
right,
it's
right.
targeted
But
gamers.
like,
I'm
there's certain
saying that
things
it's
that
targeted
gamers are gonna be
gamers.
more interested in other groups of people, like obviously video
Well,
games, right, and
the reason I say
consoles
snack
and
food,
accessories, stuff like that.
the reason I say snack food,
Well,
or
you're
perhaps
not
like,
wrong. That has been an association, right? Because like Dorito Pope and because of them companies spending a lot of money on this sort of marketing.
well, I'm not even thinking of it from that necessarily that perspective. I'm thinking it from the perspective of like what are products that are convenient for somebody who is playing a video game. A small, snack food thing is a convenient thing to eat while you're playing a video game. A can of soda or even a bottle of water. These are easy.
E-girl bathwater. That's what chat says.
Oh, I remember that. That was something else. That
All right.
was a
All
lot.
right. Anything else you want to say about Operation Disrespectful Nod in the email campaigns?
No, I think with a little more focus that could potentially be correct. At least you need organizing and you need focus. I think it's again, those are the types of things that where I've reevaluated GamerGate. I think that they're closer to getting it than the other side is because there's not so much deference towards institutions on the GamerGate side.
In September 2014, it was revealed that nearly 150 games journalists from competing publications were in a mailing group called Game Journal Pros. What did you think of this revelation?
I even at the time I did not like that. Like I thought that was not something I was willing to defend, and I think that was part of what started to fracture me away from those types of people because I would when people said things like you think Game Journal Pros is good, I was like I don't entirely understand what that is. At the time I certainly didn't, but I don't like what it sounds like. So, I mean, looking back on it, it's pretty obvious. Like, you know, I think a simple mailing list where you're sending out information and spin and ideas and stuff like that, like again, we're kind of talking about things that aren't organized. We're kind of just talking about putting out information and other people kind of being potentially able to lazily use that information, which means that whatever agenda was originally put in that information is the same agenda that comes through from all of them. It's potentially just from pure laziness, a very bad thing in terms of neutrality of perspective, which is what journalism should have. So I don't think that that's a good thing. I don't like that. I didn't like that when it happened, or at least I didn't like what it sounded like when it happened. That wasn't something I was willing to defend at the time.
Do you have any thoughts on deep freeze?
Could you refresh my memory on what that is?
Bone Golem created deep freeze as a site to catalog ethical violations. I'll link it in the Discord.
Okay, I remember. Yes, I remember what that is. I mean, on the face of it, that is a good idea. But I think I would give the same type of answer that I would about Destiny's um, want to put out an outlet that represents two sides of an issue equally. I think that it's um, a good impulse and something that on its face is something you should at least try to do. And I commend that type of a thing. But I also think that it's, if I remember right, and please understand this is going off of a memory that is certainly biased in perspective because I am just repeating things that I remember. It could very well be stuff that I am taking from Spin, but I don't remember it being something that worked out as it intended, or as stated.
What do you mean?
Uh, well, I don't remember it being like a useful catalog of journalistic conflicts and corruption.
I find it
But
useful,
again,
but
but
yeah.
again, I want to say that is an unreliable memory that I am just attempting to remember
Well,
what was something at a time,
the
you know?
biggest critique I remember people having, like anti-GamerGate people, like the people who actually like knew what it was and cared, I guess,
Sure.
was that they have sensationalism on there as one of the things that they document if a journalist
What?
was sensationalistic. But that's
Oh,
it's
okay.
somewhat subjective. Um, but that's just
Yes,
one thing that they look at, not just.
I will have to go ahead and say that I don't think sensationalism is a worthwhile critique on its own. But I also would say that I don't have enough of a memory of this website to say if I consider
It's still up, so you can check it out if you want.
I will do that. I think. Are they still? Is it
They're
up in
not
a?
active anymore. It's up in like
Okay,
a
yeah.
historical capacity. Like
Right, right, right.
they don't update. They haven't updated since late 2017,
Okay, okay.
or I think
Well,
so at
still,
least.
yeah, yeah.
September
From that
2017 was the last major update on the homepage.
and again, I am going off of what is probably a memory that is biased by, what I heard from other anti-GamerGate people at the
Oh, I
time.
should disclose I donated to them too, but I've already disclosed that other places in the book. But it was also like a
I
few
don't.
bucks, so it's not really the end of the world.
I, yeah, I don't
But it's
think
not
that
because
that's the
because it was
worth.
also it was a few bucks 10 years ago, so it's like it's biasing me today. Maybe
Yeah,
like 10,
I would
maybe
say
like
that
10 or
it's.
15 total because I donated on a monthly basis to them.
I would say that's probably not biasing you today,
Yeah,
a
I
decade
I
later.
I disclosed it when I interviewed Bone Golem, the creator of the site.
Sure, sure, sure. But yeah, again, like I don't feel like I feel like I'm probably going to have to go through and read it myself in order to say a concrete opinion of what it actually is, going off of a incomplete, an incomplete memory, probably built on biased information.
Well, and
I don't remember it working out.
you remember Murkoff de Perk, you know her.
I feel like yes, but I
She
don't.
she thought it was weird to catalog this stuff. I think I've heard a couple of people say that Merck's not anti-Gamergate. She's neutral on it, as far as I'm aware. She came around later on, she
Okay.
interviewed me about Gamergate. She didn't like the idea of creating a list of the various ethical problems, but I disagree with her.
I think so.
But and they also show corrections too. So like all they have to do if they don't want to be on there anymore, if they want to have their thing, is just issue a correction when they mess up, and then
Right,
literally it'll show, hey, they did the right thing, they corrected this. So
right. And also, like, I don't think that that is an inherently bad idea at all. I think if you say that that's an inherently bad idea, like, I feel like you're not really 100% sure what journalism is. Because again, like the whole thing is based on credibility. The whole thing is based on um, putting out truthful information that is useful and relevant. And if there are violations of that, it doesn't hurt to catalog that. I like at its base level. I don't think that that's a bad idea. You know.
In August 2015, Michael Koretsky, a regional director for the Society of Professional Journalists, hosted the SPJ Airplay conference. The idea of the conference was to have journalistic ethics experts meet with Gamergate supporters to discuss their concerns about games journalism and the way the media covered Gamergate. The second half of the conference was interrupted by bomb threats, forcing the convention center to be evacuated. Do you have any thoughts on this event?
Well, see, the problem with that, um, I mean, you can't know for sure who did a bomb threat, which is
I
unfortunate
didn't. To
because
be clear, yeah, I don't blame any specific person. Well, actually, I don't blame any group. I mean, rather, I blame the individual who did the threat. Right?
yeah, no, that's what I was going to get at. Like, it's unfortunate that somebody did that because all that ends up doing is make any point that you're trying to that your quote unquote side is trying to make look bad. Like anybody, and that's why I say it's kind of unfortunate that it's not possible to know who it is because you could have a bad faith actor on either side do that in order to make the other side look bad. It's a completely anonymous act generally when that happens. I would say that uh, as said in the chat, who investigates the investigators is a good I think relevant thing to say. But yes, I kind of the bomb threat thing. It really bugs me because it really undermines almost any real point that anybody has to make. If somebody calls in a bomb threat, let's say I am on stage and a fan of me calls in a bomb threat because they don't like how it's going for me. I don't like that as a person. I feel like that's bad. Like if it's something's going bad for me because I am uninformed or I am not.
Well, we can spend here and virtue signal about the bomb threat all day. What do you think of the event?
Uh, I, I, it's a good question. What specifically?
Well, there's the morning panel where they talked about games journalism, and there's the afternoon panel where they talked about how the media covered Gamergate. Well, in theory, it was about that at least. What do you think of
Okay.
the two? What do you think of the first panel?
I don't. I, I mean, I hate to say this, but I just don't remember enough about it. I wish.
Well, what did you
Was
think as an anti-Gamergate person when you saw that this was happening?
as an anti-Gamergate person, I could say that I want to say I remember disliking it because like all of the information that I had was that there was no reason to listen to the other side. But again, that would be something that as, an adult who's reevaluated these types of things, I think that it's good when people are allowed to say what they think. Even if, like, let's say hypothetically it was entirely correct that you don't need to talk to these people and they're lying about everything. Like it's good. That needs to be out there. People need to see that. Like if somebody's very clearly lying about something, it's better for it to be out there than for it not to be. So I would say that, at least on the perspective that they were attempting to get people's perspective, um, I would say I probably didn't support it at the time, but I do support that mission now, so to speak. I think that it's good for people to, again, hypothetically speaking, even if they are the bad people, even if they are the baddies, it is good for people to be allowed to say what they think. If it turns out that they have bad opinions, it's better that we know that. And if it turns out that this is a misunderstanding, it's better that we know that. Or if it turns out that they have a completely different perspective than what we thought that they had, it's better that we know that. Like it's I hate to sound like a broken record, but it just sounds so absurd the position that people were in at that time, and it's why I'm so against the team sports thing. I would rather know every time nowadays.
Do you think Koretsky did a good job?
That I can't. I absolutely can't answer because I feel like I don't. If I'm going off memory, I feel like if it would be irresponsible for me to make an answer on that.
Why do you think the media largely didn't cover SPJ airplay?
Because I think that they viewed it as, um, for lack of a better word, maybe taboo. Like you're not supposed to cover this thing that the baddies are doing. That it's allowing the baddies to talk and say that what they think, because they all come from this perspective that any information that you take in just automatically changes your opinion. Because I guess like the only way to have a good opinion is to have only heard the right opinion ever, which is, I mean, it's first off subjective. Like every opinion is, there's no right opinion. There are certainly facts and not facts, but it's often filtered through opinion. So we have to understand that we are of limited capacity as human beings to see the absolute objective in everything. We have to understand that. And in understanding that, we have to understand that it is important to hear things that contradict what our current opinion is, even if only for understanding why we think what we think currently. So I think that they didn't. I think that they didn't cover it fairly because if I remember looking back, the reason, like the thing that everybody was like, yeah, that shouldn't happen, and therefore we shouldn't talk about it. And that's always the bad. That's the bad opinion. That's the wrong approach, not opinion. Approach.
Do you have any thoughts on the Safe Point panel at South by Southwest or the GamerGate panels that I ran at Arch Anime and Natsucon?
I unfortunately can't say that I do. No.
Have you seen the recently released Airplay documentary?
I actually have not, and it's only because I have not been able to make the time to watch it. Um, it's I feel like it's an important piece of information, and I am wanting to get to it. So it's something that is on my list, but it's just a matter of getting to it when I am not knee deep in something else that I
I've
have
inter
to. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just talking about not having the amount of time that I wish that I had in a day.
Well, the filmmaker I've interviewed him.
Excellent.
He's looking to talk to more people about the project. I'm sure he'd be willing to talk with you if you wanted to.
I'd
But
be interested.
he'd probably
Yeah.
want you to watch it first, though, I imagine.
No, I definitely want to watch it before I speak with him in any capacity. But I would definitely like to talk to him after seeing it.
He might even do a watch party with you. Well,
Oh,
for
that would be
part
cool.
one though, I don't think because part two you have to pay for. So part one's free.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. No, let's. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the Kunkel Awards?
I don't know what the Kunkel Awards is.
So after Airplay, Koretsky and Lynn Walsh advocated for the Kunkel Awards, which was awards to encourage good games journalism by the Society of Professional Journalists. This went on
Oh,
for a
okay.
number of years. They later merged the Kunkel Awards into their normal journalism award ceremony, and they just have like a Excellence in Gaming Journalism Award at their normal ceremony
Okay.
award show. But it was its own separate thing for a while. Do you think
Okay.
award shows like that, creating good incentives to reward good journalism in games in gaming, do you think that that's a good idea?
I think first off, it depends on execution. I think that there's a certain execution of that could potentially at least help, maybe not necessarily absolutely direct where games journalism goes, at very least. But I would also say that the way that I am familiar with most award shows going is that it often creates tiers in which there are people who just consider themselves impossible to be nominated for awards who would, I think, perhaps view that as discouraging, because I know that there are, let's say in entertainment, there's the Oscars. There are certain people who I am sure are discouraged from certain types of work, knowing that it most likely won't be considered for an Oscar. And I think that
Well, the answer then is to have either one, different types of award ceremonies for these
yes,
neglected works, or two, and I think that like some of them do this. I don't know about all of them, but like you need to expand. Like it would be bullshit if like you were like, oh, best director, best actor, best actress, or
yes,
combined.
yes.
But then you're like, oh, but the cinematography people, fuck them. They don't do anything important. Like it's obviously not true, right?
Yeah, that's
So
why I
I think
said
you
I
should
think
have
it really
rewards for them
depends.
too, right? Yeah.
It really depends on execution. I think it could be helpful if executed correctly. Well, not correctly, but in a way that considers, all of the aspects of the work actually something worth considering for awards.
Yeah, I agree, 1,000%. That's like a pluralistic approach to award ceremonies, I guess, really, right?
I
Because you're
do.
taking into
Yeah,
account the interests of the people who aren't the big famous celebrities or the directors, right?
I think that that's a
I
very
think it's very important.
important. I think that if I mean that's kind of my problem with the Oscars. Also, like I think that there's a lot of time spent on highly specific types of work and highly specific aspects of those highly specific types of work, and I think that's discouraging to certain other types of.
Do they
Uh,
not though? Well, they do though, right? They do best picture, best director, best actor, best actress, best cinematography, best production design, best adapted screenplay, best sound. Like they do, right?
I think they do, but I think that there's also a lot of different emphasis. Like the main award show handles a lot of those other things. There's a lot of awards that are not televised, and I think that a lot of people consider those to be
Best
kind of
costume
second tier.
design.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's good.
they end up kind of separating out the quote unquote lesser awards. I think that's kind of what I'm
Oh, okay.
getting at.
I
Like they
I
don't
don't wa-
treat it
I don't think
as
I've
though
ever
it.
watched these in full in my life. Other than well, I think I might have had to at work before because they threw it on the TV at work. But
Sure, I mean, to some extent, what we're saying does definitely create a longer, potentially more boring award ceremony. But at the same time, you don't have to do it all in one go either. Like, why not, you know, have one of those big attention getting awards and have a number of other awards and do that this weekend? Why not just like separate it out to where there's something that people know will get attention and then
right, but also
line
their
up.
whole thing shouldn't be like, oh, it's a televised thing. Like, yeah, sure, like that's you have to
Yes.
take that into account.
I
Yes, but at
I
the
think
same time, you also have to take into account too that like the in theory, the real reason you should be doing this is because you want to award the best merit, right? That's really
yeah.
it. Artistic and
Yes.
technical merit. That's what it literally says in
Yes.
Wikipedia. I'm not sure if
And then the
the
then the
website description
question
is.
then the ultimate question is that what is being rewarded? And if it is, then I think that you're probably talking about something that does actually help. Like I don't think like if you're actually rewarding good work and on the basis of it being good work, you're creating an incentive to do good work. So yes, I think potentially, and this is it's a potential yes, but yes, it could help. It very much could help.
Well, on the neutral question list, we've got 6 creative freedom questions before we jump into politics. I don't think we're going to get through 6 questions in 6 minutes. Anything else you want to talk about in our remaining time, or do you want to close her down?
I think you know I don't know. I mean, in some respects, I'm trying to think if there's anything that we covered today that I want to say something else about, and not necessarily. Although, you know, I hadn't had the time to get to the whale story, prior to our interview today. I ended up doing quite a bit of work, and I had a couple of things happen that prevented me from even really looking at my Discord anything throughout most of the day. But that was I do want to thank you for bringing that to my attention. Like that was
Well, Yeah, I'm so glad we got to talk about it too for this book because I feel like it's an important part of history, and I'm glad we got to explore that because I think that this project is I'm cucking your answer so hard right now. But I think part of this project too, because people are going to be reading this book decades, centuries from now. I think it's also documenting like the lives of the people in the years 2023, 2024.
Well, you would be able to infer a lot of aspects of human social relationships from what we're talking about too. Like we're talking about a lot of uh, particularly institutional, I think, relationships when we're talking about game journalism. But we're also talking about an event that I think ended up, to return to what I said at the very beginning, it ended up blowing up in scope quite a bit. People's scope didn't necessarily remain focused on, hey, Kotaku is doing something wrong and not, handling this situation as, uh, again, the way that I put out forward that I would handle a problem that undermines the credibility of an outlet. I think is a pretty straightforward and not difficult answer. Uh, Obviously, there are going to be situations where there are circumstances beyond that, but I think there's a lot to infer, and a different species that knows nothing about humans and who we are and what to expect from us beyond whatever they have been able to observe from the ocean with us as a hostile thing to deal with. um, I think that there's a lot of valuable information in this. There's a lot to infer
Well, and it's
as a
it's it's the story of I was gonna say. So there was I was talking with Raymond the other day. The third I told him there's multiple reasons why I think that the project should be translated to other languages. Like one of which is that like even if the English narrative on this gets fucked up because of the misinformation, um, that the other languages, people in other languages, would have access to the truth. And then I also said too that it would also expand like it would be me entering these other markets. But
mm-hmm.
three, another thing too is I think the story of GamerGate is the story of fighting for a pluralistic world and democracy. And so that's my big takeaway from all of this. And so I think that it's good for that message to get out there in the world. And I think if people living in totalitarian regimes find solace in my work, or no, that's not right, is it? Yeah, yeah, solace in my work. Um,
Yeah, no,
then I think that
solace
that's
is the
good.
right word, I
And
think.
inspiration from my work, then I think that's important.
Well, and then another thing is even like another culture looking at like an American phenomenon in
Well, this isn't
politics
no,
is.
no, no, dude, no, this is not American. Like something like 45% of the GamerGate people are not American.
I
That's
guess.
from the Brad Glasgow and Chris Ferguson research actually, and I've interviewed
Well,
tons of people from all over the world, Asia,
that's
Europe,
fair.
Latin America. Well, the
That's
Latin
certainly
American
fair.
person, I don't. They say they're gonna send me their text interview at some point, so I assume I'll get it.
The thing I'm getting at though is it's the conflict that arises is more or less due to American institutions acting not necessarily correct. Um, that's kind of what I'm meaning in that. Not necessarily that everybody was an American, but there's certain like Kotaku in Action as a subreddit. I'm sure is made up of people from many different
Well,
countries,
not
but
just
Kotaku
Kiev,
itself.
because Chris Ferguson and Glasgow's research looked at GamerGate, a wide spectrum of GamerGate communities. They did a really good job actually. But
Yeah,
anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
but Kotaku itself it's an American company, and if anything, there's an interesting thing to infer here in that the actions of an American company can have such an effect on so many different people worldwide. That's another,
Mhm.
I think, valuable piece of information that, culturally speaking, whether we're talking about people from another country or another culture, or we're talking about another species who can intelligently understand, I think that that's interesting information.
Well, I'm going to add a
That
new
I think.
question. I think actually, I actually already did for the neutral question. Unless I'm going to add to the others. Can you
Uh
explain GamerGate to any cetaceans who might be reading or listening to this?
huh.
They can barely explain it
I'm
to
not.
humans.
Yeah, I was just that was what I was about to say. I don't know if I can explain GamerGate um to like a person who I don't know if they know what gamer culture is, or even
Try
to some extent
right now.
to somebody who doesn't know what um even like internet dynamics. A lot of there are people who don't really understand like how social media works, and I don't know if I could explain it to a person who doesn't understand social media. I don't know if I have the capability to do that.
Can you try right now for me?
To somebody who doesn't, well, first I have to explain social media. Which,
Well, we don't have to do it tonight. We can just we don't have to do it
yeah,
at all. Actually,
we can, yeah, we can
do you want to think
try.
it over and we can maybe for part three
If
we'll
there's, yeah,
explore it.
no, I think it's worth at least trying.
Oh, I sent you the thing for Hatman. Hatman's research into pre-Gamergate. The what do you think of that? The prehistory. Did you read it?
I was not able to read it, but
Okay.
I will try to read it before the next
Well,
time
I've
we
not
do
read it
this. All
yet
right.
either, so
Okay.
I've only read
Well,
half
let's
of it.
let's
It's so big. I haven't gone back yet and finished.
let's both attempt to read it before the next time we do this.
I can make that happen. I need to anyway. All right. Well, hey,
Okay.
anything else?
No, I appreciate the conversation. This is, again, I enjoy the conversation. Very good stuff.
Yeah, and if I'm looking at my phone right now, don't feel like I'm being an asshole. I'm literally I want to make sure I add the cetacean question to all three question lists.
Sure, sure. No, understandable. I mean, if we're talking about potentially another species, it like being able to understand something that is probably very fundamentally human, like a very fundamentally human event and situation. That's valuable to them, to somebody who does not have insight as to human culture, human society, human industry, human dynamics. There's a lot to glean, I think, from this.
I think you're correct, though. I hope if this is their entry into learning about people, humans, I mean,
I
they're
hope
they're people
I
too,
would
but
say I would say my guess is it wouldn't be.
I would
I
assume
don't.
not. I assume that other people will translate works before I translate this.
I would assume that as well. I think.
But maybe not, because I'm a mover and a shaker. I'm really and I have an interest in this more than
Yeah.
most people
No.
do.
No.
So
I get
maybe
you.
this will be one of the first books they read. Or well, again, it might be like it doesn't have to be reading, quote unquote. It could be like an audio
Yeah.
translation, right? It doesn't have to.
I have a feeling. Yeah. I have a feeling that maybe.
That's probably more likely to be the case. I don't know. We'd have to see how it
Yeah.
all plays out. But they
I.
probably will.
It's
They if they don't already have a written language, which they don't, I assume. There was no reason to think that they would. Um, they probably will have to make one though, right? Because like that's something that a bunch of human tribes have done, right? Like
certainly.
they've
Yes.
because most language, huge written language and verbal language are very different things, or they're not very different, but they're not all civilizations have a written language. So a lot of them have created them over time, including
Sure.
like, relatively recently.
Well, so we talked a little bit about how, given we would potentially be establishing diplomatic relations and then potentially creating technology that could either assist or entertain those types of. I think that starts getting into that area because I think the reason that they don't have a written language is primarily due to the fact that they don't have. If they are intelligent on a level that is, comparable to an adult human, it's probably because they don't have hands and opposable thumbs and those types of things. And I think that they would probably be capable of it if there
Oh,
were
sure.
technology that were able to assist in the physical aspect of that. Even if that is some kind of um, transmission that has something to do with translating sound into text or translating like a Neuralink type situation, translating neural patterns into text. I don't
I
know.
thought about that as
Um,
well. Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's another question that's very worth asking, and I am probably gonna start heading out
Yeah.
here, but
No. No.
I
100%.
I think that there's some very interesting implications in all of that. I think it's very, very interesting.
because YouTube Studio's fucked up. I don't think. Oh wait, it loaded. Oh my god.
No.
Oh my god. I actually loaded the editing. Oh my. We can actually raid
See, I've
somebody.
been. Oh, cool. See, what I was saying, I've had problems with the YouTube interface today as well.
I
It's
think
moved
it's got
very, very
it's
slow.
glitchy. It's
Yeah.
super slow,
Okay.
super duper slow.
Okay. So it
It's
was
not
not
just you.
me and my internet. So I'm happy to know that.
Oh my god, it can't. Oh my, look how it's so slow. It can't even show me who's live that I'm following right now, and allows raids. I
Right.
guess it's so slow. It's not even loaded this yet. Amazing.
Yeah, and I had it while I was both on the studio end and I was also having it on video loading. I was having videos that were loading very badly.
Do you think it's because we're using ad block and YouTube's trying to go to war with that? They stopped for a while, but they might be trying to start it back up and trying to harass users, basically. They should, by the
I
way, they should face serious consequences for doing that, by the way. I got rid of Chrome because Chrome's garbage,
uh-huh.
because Google owns them and they literally throttled. Did you hear about that story? Anyway, you
I
gotta
did.
go.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
bullshit.
No, I gotta go. But yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that it is bullshit. I do use an ad blocker, but I do pay for premium, um, because you get a couple of other things with it. And even paying for premium, I'm getting the same problem. So I
Okay,
don't think
so
it's
it's
the ad
probably not
block.
that.
This one, I don't. This I think it's technical problems.
All right,
But
well,
anyway,
I'm
I'll
sorry I
let
can't
you
read
go.
anybody. If everyone was hoping I would read them, anyway, have a good night, everyone. Thanks for
It was
watching.
good talking to you,
Like the
man.
video, comment, leave lots of comments.